I explain it? The Biden administration once more covering up the FBI. Make sure the guy sniffing children all day be Epstein Island. You know he come to play. But here's the thing you might not have known about. The FBI covered up the laptop from him. Now we know they always been doing this. I've been saying it for years, but I've been through with it. Everybody says Rob just a conspiracy theorist. Every single day it turns out he's more right, and we see that the FBI covered up all the stuff, cocaine in the White House. We don't know who guy did this. Don't look at Hunter. We know he likes to do a little powder, but it's not him. We know that for fact, cause they can't figure out anything that might look bad, Jack, for Biden out there. But that's when we get to the 1023, cause we see that it shows that the corruption, confidential human source, we're talking about corruption. Down with 1023.
Yeah, you know me.
You're down with 1023.
Yeah, you know me.
You're down with 1023.
Yeah, you know me.
You're down with 1023.
Every last homie.
Except the people like Pisco and the others out there, because they cover it up, because they really don't care. The corruption's just fine when it comes to them. I'll be debating it Saturday. Now we got to end this. Yeah, it wasn't bad for just impromptu. What can I say? I'm working on some more rapping type stuff. I feel like I talk fast, but do I have any rhythm? No. Not really, but that was all impromptu. What do you think? No lyrics. You know what I had up? Here, I'll show you. I had the karaoke, but that's of Naughty by Nature. There's no there's no 1023 lyrics. Yeah, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Normal America Show. Having a little fun today. Oh, my goodness. Where to even begin? Well, first off, it'll be a short show, unfortunately. So, where has Rob been? God. Feels like every week I talk to you all. It's like another work situation comes up. So, here's what happened. I have to be careful with what I say. For those who don't know, I do home health care. When I go to work, I'm here 24/7, even though I get downtime. I get break time when I'm not being paid and things like that. So what's been happening here lately is we've been down to 2 staff, and unfortunately the other staff has another job. What that means is that I'm literally here 5 days a week, 24/7. Even though I have downtime when I'm here, it means I can't be home, not with my family. So when I get home, I'm rarely streaming because I want to spend time with my family because I'm gone at work all week. It's also because we're down to 2 staff. It's led to some crises at work. So normally, when you have free time, you have free time. Sometimes because you're dealing with people, in a healthcare settings, sometimes people are sick or sometimes people are having, emotional crisis and things like that. And so even though I'm on downtime, I'm not really at liberty to start doing a stream or anything because any given moment, something crazy could happen. So it's really cut into my time. Now, we're waiting to see about getting the 3rd staff. That has came to a resolution, so it should be next week. We're back to having a 3rd staff, which would mean I'm back to a normal schedule. But I was going to have to do one more week of 5 days, but I should have been off Wednesday, Thursday, and then came into work here Friday evening. What happened was the other staff we have, had a medical emergency. So that means I came in Sunday, and I worked Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Then I was supposed to go home, but I couldn't, so I worked Thursday, Friday. Then I worked Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I'm on an 11-day stretch. And oftentimes what happens is consistency is very important with a lot of the people I work with. And so when there's an unforeseen thing, like a new staff coming in, or a staff that was supposed to be here that's unable to because of some illness or something like that, oftentimes that puts us in a situation where it's sort of a crisis environment. So I was unable to stream it all this week, unfortunately. We'll talk about that in a second, McBacon. So that's where I've been. I apologize. I know I told people last you saw me as moderating a debate. Yeah, I'll moderate debates. I'd rather debate, And then the other thing that's just terrible is, it's not like it used to be for me, Back in the day, I was able to just go through stuff with a fine-tooth comb, watch every hearing, read every, document that came out and stuff, reading the entire Mueller report, stuff like that. Because I think that there are good people out there, that are doing good stuff, parsing through this stuff, but there's not enough. And I find myself thinking about things in a different way. So oftentimes when I go through the actual documents or the hearings, I recognize stuff that I don't see anyone else saying. unfortunately, I just haven't had the time. So, like, all these hearings, these whistleblower hearings and things like that occurred yesterday and today, I've probably seen an hour's worth of that. It's unfortunate. I wish that I had more time to be able to cover more of it. I got the bare bones of it, but, you know. So anyways, then today, I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to stream or not. I don't have long. I'll probably be done by 9 o'clock. I made a couple posts on Twitter that I think were relevant. Speaking of the little bit I saw about the whistleblower, does anyone else think it's interesting? You know, all the people that are concerned. It's so funny how this stuff works, right? Like, so when Trump was president, right, and they'd be like, Trump's attacking the free press, and you'd be like, well, compared to what, right? Like, when it comes to going after whistleblowers that talk to the press or targeting members of the press, Trump's done that far less than his predecessor Obama did. And anytime you said something like that, they were like, now. Obama's not president now. Trump's there now. That's what matters. You know, kids in cages. And you're like, yeah, those cages were built under Obama. Now. Obama's not there. Kids in cages now. You know, that sort of thing. You know, but it's funny, those same people, now Biden's president. And so it's like, okay, we have all these stories of corruption of Biden and of the FBI, right? Any comment on that? Instead, it's just Trump. It's whataboutism to talk about the current president. We have to talk about the former president. I wonder why. Isn't that odd? Whataboutism. Don't worry, that's their strategy. So when all these whistleblowers came out, you know, isn't it funny? You remember when whistleblowers were sacrosanct? Remember when you couldn't even say their name? Remember that? What was the name of it? Charamello, remember? The whistleblower with Trump's call with Ukraine. It wasn't Vindman, it was this guy Charamello. And he was talking to the Democrats and all. You couldn't even say his name. He would be endangered. But now we have whistleblowers coming out of the woodwork from the FBI, the IRS, other places, and they're just smeared. Oh, you're terrible people. How dare you? How dare you? They're terrible people. They're all Trump people. That's what they are. So now we found out one of the IRS whistleblowers was this guy Ziegler, who's a Democrat, who's been a career employee for like 8 years at the IRS. And he happens to be a married gay man. Smells like a Trump supporter to me, right? Now, they didn't care when we had all the FBI agents with their obvious bias against Trump and the obvious double standard that we saw with the Trump investigation versus the Hillary and stuff. They didn't give a shit about that. When we had Mueller's team, you know, who literally was appointed to, because Comey got fired. There's a thunderstorm going on here. Because Comey got fired, who'd they appoint as the special counselor? His mentor, Bob Mueller, who then promptly put a bunch of career Democrats, including some that had worked for Hillary's foundation in the past. They didn't care about that. That was all cool. It wasn't like, oh, these people were biased. Whistleblowers were the coolest. You couldn't question them. Now these whistleblowers come out and it's the only thing they have is to attack them. That's it. That's all they have. Oh, well, Kash Patel sent money to one of them, so we can't trust that person forever. That's it. End of story. Oh, this person said that he thought January 6th was blown out of proportion. No, we can't trust anything they say. They don't listen to what they're saying. They don't listen to anything like that. They're just like, nope, it's all stupid. They're all biased. When it's their side, bias doesn't matter. When you can see clear double standards, and you're like, wait a minute. You know, even if you accept their narrative events, right? If you accept, because as always, my interest in this isn't just looking at Biden or looking at one candidate or one president. It's looking at the institutions, such as the FBI. Even their version of events is, well, the FBI made all these mistakes. All these mistakes. It was just mistakes and things like that, but it wasn't corruption. It was just mistakes. They didn't know you weren't supposed to change evidence to say the opposite of the truth, to continue to get wiretaps against the President of the United States. They just didn't know. They didn't know that. They didn't know if you're doing an investigation, you're not supposed to have the lawyer, or you're not supposed to have the alleged co-conspirators in the room, like when Hillary Clinton was interviewed with her assistants that were also being investigated. They didn't know that. They didn't know. They didn't know that you were supposed to verify information before you got FISA warrants. Didn't know. They just didn't know. All mistakes. Oh, well. That's what it's just a series of haphazard mistakes. That's their version of event. But even if we believe that, okay, if we accept that narrative, why is it then when all of a sudden we can point whistleblowers coming out saying, well, look, there's more to it than that? Why are they like, the FBI's beyond reproach, we can't question them, you're unpatriotic for doing that, how dare you? They just say, no, we have to attack the people that are making these claims. We can't defend it on... And we'll go through some of this on Twitter today. People accuse me of things all the time. All of these things you've said, I've seen them debunked a million times. Really, name one. You know they've been dunked. This is what they do. They say, it's debunked, and you're like, show me how, and then they can't, and then the next time they see you bring it up, they say, but we already debunked that. Really, how so? Oh my God. If you're too... You can't get it. We debunked it a million times. Give me an example. Can't. I saw Debbie Wasserman Schultz going after RFK. Hilarious. We have the Democrat message now. We have to censor people for democracy. That's their message. We have to make sure that the establishment hand-picked candidates are the only ones that are allowed to have a voice. We have to make sure. Or otherwise we'll harm democracy. We need major institutions like the FBI censoring Americans or we'll harm democracy. You see? You see how that goes? That's where we're at. So, with bated breath, I waited for all the... Now, listen. I exist in a small little sphere of the world when it comes to this. I like my small little sphere. If I die and I've not moved the needle anywhere culturally, maybe I made one person ever go, interesting point. Anyways, on to a better content creator. If I die without having any movement whatsoever, culturally, politically, whatsoever, because of me, but I had a great family and great friends, I'm happy. I'm happy to be an anonymous nobody. That's fine. I got a great life. I got a great son. I got a great wife. I'm happy with it, right? I don't care. Would I like to be able to have influence? Of course. Of course I would. I think I have good ideas. I think that I'm pointing out good things. I would like to see my vision be implemented. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Thank you, McBacon Love. Thank you. I do appreciate it. I do. But I exist in a small space. Right now I have like 25, 30 people watching. And I exist in a small space with other people that I interact with that even if they're bigger than me, they occupy a small space as well. So the people I debate, or the people whose shows I go on to debate. But it's a space that I'm intimately familiar with. I know these people. I've been in this space for 4 years or so. So I know. I've been doing the debate panels and debating people. Even before that, I was online arguing with people on blogs since like 2012. So I've been in an online sphere, but particularly like the Twitch and YouTube debate community, I've dabbled. And so a lot of times I'm able to gauge response to a cultural or political story based on the people I've interacted with. Now, I've interacted with an awful lot of people on an awful lot of topics on these platforms. But the topic that I'm most passionate about is corruption, particularly corruptions in our institutions such as the intel agencies. And so, knowing that so many of these people, particularly those on the left that I've debated, are very interested in corruption as well, because anytime Donald Trump was accused of doing anything corrupt, oh boy, their ears perked up. They're ready to go. They're ready to talk about that. So now we have credible whistleblowers coming from the FBI, the IRS, other places that are talking about corruption at the FBI, DOJ. And I thought, I wonder what those people are saying. My left-wing friends, the Dylan Burns, the Piscos, the Destinys, wonder what they're saying about it. They doing videos right now on it? They putting tweets up talking about it? Furthermore, let's widen our scope. What are like the legacy media people saying? What are they saying? What's CNN saying? What's Anderson Cooper have to say about it? How about Jake Tapper? Thanks, Nico. What do you think they have to say about it? Well, there were two responses to the IRS whistleblowers yesterday. Response one, by far the most common response, was to act like it didn't happen. To not comment, to say nothing. Now, I remind you in a nutshell of what these IRS whistleblowers were saying. They were saying that there were obvious felonies that Hunter Biden committed, that they were all in agreement that those would be charged, that they were told that by their boss, basically, that he was being stymied and wasn't able to bring those charges by people in the DOJ, that there were certain things they weren't allowed to ask about, such as any connections to Hunter Biden's dad, Joe Biden, when it came to these money laundering or money schemes, tax evasions, things like that. They alleged that the DOJ repeatedly tipped off Hunter Biden when they were going to question him or when they were going to search premises, have a warrant and things like that. And they ultimately were told they couldn't even, in most cases, interview the person they were looking into in Hunter Biden. They were not given access to material they knew existed, such as the laptop. These are damning, right? Because what we've been told, what they'll say is, again, look at what my allegation is. My allegation is there is corruption in places like the FBI. And the response to me is always, but the FBI did an investigation and said that's not true. They looked into Biden's and said that, it wasn't a big deal. So there, you're debunked, Rob. They looked into themselves and found that they'd done nothing wrong. Or they said, yeah, there were a couple mistakes, we'll fix that. And then the same shit happens over and over. So I wasn't shocked to see, and this is the same strategy that's used by members of the mainstream media, but right down to the commentators that I debate all the time. Wait until someone puts out the official talking point and then just repeat it over and over. So, I'm sure right now there are people in the mainstream media at the Washington Post and the New York Times diligently looking for any dirt they could find on these two IRS whistleblowers. What's that? This Ziegler guy, a career Democrat, married to a man? We found out that, he went to a MAGA rally 3 years ago. And he'd be like, yeah, I went because I hated it. I was recording it. Yeah, but he went. So, there it is. Kash Patel donated to his homeowners association. Oh, there you go. You can't trust him. Remember, these are the same people that say these FBI agents that were retaliated by the FBI, according to them, and are now suffering and have gone for months without a paycheck, and they can't leave and get another job because they can't get their security clearance, and if they leave, they lose all claim to getting the back pay that the FBI is supposed to pay them, so they're struggling with their families. One of the guys, if you remember the FBI whistleblower testimony, said that he was shipped out across the country to Wisconsin, told that he was going to go work in a different office, and then as soon as they got there, he was told that he was suspended, and they wouldn't even allow him to open the U-Haul with his family's winter coats and things like that. That's how destitute he became. Couldn't even get his family's clothing. He's got like a 2-year-old kid. Couldn't even get that for his wife and kid. That's how destitute these people are. And so, of course, people on the other side of the aisle, like Kash Patel, people from Breitbart, places like that, are like, yeah, we'll send you some money. Oh, well, they took the money. They're evil. Now, never mind. These people had no problem when it was Hillary's team working with suspected Russian spies and all these other people that they were working with and paying and having these financial relationships. And then those people, like, why'd the investigation start? Because Papadopoulos, Alexander Downer, he was this diplomat from Australia that had heavily donated to the Clinton Foundation. So much so, at one point, he was under investigation in Australia for improperly giving state money, accused of improperly giving state money to the Clinton Foundation, which I believe he was never charged for. But that's the connections he had to the Clinton Foundation. Power may go out. We're lightning pretty bad here. What's up, Casimir? That's where we're at there, right? That's who they didn't give a shit about that. They weren't saying, well, why would you trust that guy? Why would the FBI listen to that dude? He's clearly biased. It's different. It's different when it's them. So that was the same old strategy they always do. Wait until someone talks about it. And then the bigger strategy is this. Here's something that I told you. This isn't because I'm Nostradamus or anything. This was easily predictable to anyone remotely paying attention. They will charge Trump with January 6th. It's going to happen here in the next few days. Probably early next week. Could happen tomorrow. He's going to be charged. It's the grand jury. Trump's already released a statement. It's going to happen. He's going to be charged. I told you, he'd be charged with the Stormy Daniels thing. I was right about that. I told you, he'd be charged in the Georgia thing, where he talked to Kemp, and he will be charged with that. I told you that he would be charged when it came to, what was the one? I forget now. What's the one he's made? The documents, right? Taking the documents. And he's going to be charged for the January 6th thing. There are 4 charges they're going to give him. They're going to hold him up in court. It's not because he's Donald Trump. It's not because they're trying to affect the primaries or things like that. They are trying to affect the election, but it's because the lesson is, how dare anyone ever challenge our authority? That's the institutional messaging. They don't give a shit if it's a right-winger or a left-winger. They do the same to RFK. They do the same to Jill Stein. They do the same to Dennis Kucinich, if he was watching. They do the same to Dave Smith, that's a libertarian. They do the same. They don't give a shit. They do the same to whoever the fuck's running the Communist Party. They don't care. But the left's too fucking stupid to see that. They're so obtuse, they hate the orange man so bad. They're literally cheering for a massive, the largest intel and law enforcement agency in the history of the world to have unlimited power to even be able to censor people they disagree with, to lock you up, pretrial detention, drum up charges, even if you're not even accused of anything violent. They don't give a fuck because their hatred of Trump is that severe. And it'll bite them in the ass. It will. It will. You'd think we'd learn from history. You know, I mentioned it several times on the show, but, you know, last month I just finished reading the Gulag Archipelago. It's an incredible book. You have to read the first 3 volumes of the Gulag Archipelago. It's, you know, when will we learn? Mao's China wasn't enough? The Bolsheviks weren't enough? This time, if we have massive state power to crush our enemies, it won't be used against us. You did it, lefties. You did it. Good stuff. So that's what they'll do. That's the ultimate strategy. Ooh, just don't talk about the whistleblowers, and then Trump's charged next week. And then there'll be Trump, and you'll be like, well, I'm still concerned about the more than Trump or Biden or anything like that. I'm concerned with the allegations of the FBI improperly going after one candidate and defending another. Refusing to investigate him, covering up the investigation, etc. I'm more concerned about that. And they'll go, that's whataboutism. That's whataboutism. We're talking about Trump now. And CNN will talk about Trump, and Washington Post will talk about Trump, New York Times will talk about Trump, and Fox News will talk about Trump, and Breitbart will talk about Trump, and I'll talk about Trump, because I'm fucking stupid. That's why. And I'll let them control the narrative, just like I always do, just like we all always do. That's what happens. And then we'll forget about the whistleblower. Just like we forgot about the FBI whistleblowers. And the Twitter files. And all the shit they did to us under COVID. And all the shit with the Russia collusion stuff. And the Durham report. All that shit. Reported. Nothing. The GOP ain't going to do shit. You think Kevin McCarthy is going to do anything about it? You think Mitch McConnell is going to do anything about it? Of course not. They'll wag their finger. Lindsey Graham will write a strongly worded letter. And then on to the next news cycle. Oh boy, Ukraine, we have to send them cluster bombs. Wait a minute, didn't you just tell me a couple years ago that was a human right, that's a war crime? It's different now. Our guys do them. They'll have rainbow flags painted on each cluster. It'll be great. By the way, brief side point here. I know I'm ranting. I haven't been on here for a while. Does anyone else think it's hilarious now that this line that's coming from Democrats, I absolutely love this line, right? Where they're like, oh, anytime you talk about corruption or things like that at the FBI or the Biden administration, they go, well, that's all the Republicans want to talk about. The Democrats are focused on policy. Have you ever seen people less focused? I mean, there are some policies that they want, like their policies of leaving rapists and murderers walk the streets freely, and legalizing theft, and indoctrinating your children into weird sexual perversions. Those are policies they have. But oh boy, where were they for the 4 years under Trump? Is that what Democrats are saying? Oh, well, you know, what's all this Trump this, Trump that, Trump this, Trump that, all these investigations into Trump? We're concerned about policy. And all of a sudden, just like as soon as you're like, okay, shitheads, let's turn that investigative eye towards your guy now. Towards your agencies that you cheer for, they're like, whoa. Who has time to look at corruption? Actually, had someone say to me on Twitter, well, of course people like Rob are going to focus on corruption at institutions like the FBI. They don't have anything to counter Biden's excellent policies and his good economy. Yeah, the economy, it's humming along. By the way, did anybody else get, again, I don't think I'm overly smart. I think I'm a reasonably to maybe slightly above reasonably intelligent person when it comes to sort of talking politics and things like that. But I don't think I'm a genius. Most of the stuff I predicted, to me, it seems obvious. I think to most people would. Remember when I predicted this years ago? Remember I was debating Econoboy and we were talking about inflation and things like that? And I said this. I said, you want to know how this inflation thing ends? Here's what'll happen. Inflation's going to be so high. First, they fudge the numbers anyways, and then 3 months later, they're like, okay, the jobs report wasn't as good. Oh, the inflation numbers are worse than we thought. Blah, 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 blah. Payrolls weren't as high as we thought, et cetera, et cetera. They fudge each month when they're good news, good news, good news. They're fudging the numbers, and then they retract them later. But I said, here's basically, and the way they measure inflation is absurd. If we used metrics that we use, they always compare highest inflation since the 80s. Well, if we were looking at the metrics that we used in the 80s, it would be much higher than that. I remember doing a video a year and a half, 2 years ago. It was like, actually, year-to-year inflation, if we use those metrics, would be around 16, 17% year-to-year is where we'd be. But that's how they measure inflation, right? And by no means do I consider myself to be an expert in the field of economy or well-respected in the field of economy. That's what Econoboy said. I consider myself to be a layman with the emphasis on lay and man. We'll put the emphasis on both parts of that. I don't call myself an expert on anything. And yet, I have a reasonable bullshit detector. And when you look at these things, you can see that the so-called experts are bullshitting you or completely full of it most of the time. So as a layman, I was able to predict, you ready for this? I was able to predict that if we lock down the United States and world economy, that it'll have significant economic ramifications for years to come. Wow, I nailed that. Isn't that crazy? I was able to predict if we raised the amount of M2 money supply by 50%, that it would help cause a reasonable amount of inflation. Oh, I was right about that too. But the economic experts said that wouldn't be the case. That's weird. Trust the experts though, right? Just like all the COVID shit that I was right about and they were wrong about. Isn't that weird? So I was able to predict, this is what I said would happen with inflation. I was like, because it's measured year to year, think about this. Let me tell you how I will be the most successful governor in the history of this country. You ready? Let's say I get elected as governor of Pennsylvania 4 years from now, 3 years from now, right? I'm now governor of Pennsylvania. Here's what I'll do. My first day in office, I will increase the gas tax in Pennsylvania by $10 a gallon. So if the average for gas in Pennsylvania right now is like $3.50 a gallon, it will be $13.50 a gallon for 1 day. And then what I'll do is eliminate the gas tax the next day. Eliminate it. And then I'll be able to say, oh boy, look how much I've decreased inflation. Gas has gone from $13.50 an hour to $3 or a gallon to $3 a gallon. I'm the best ever. Woo! No one's ever had a drop like that. I'll tell everyone, you're all unemployed today. No one's allowed to work today. And the next day I'll say, go back to work. Look how many jobs I just created. Holy shit. Best job creator in history. That's what I said would happen with Biden. Inflation was so high, even by the metrics they were using, 8%, 8.5%, 9%, getting close to 10% year over year. That increase, as exorbitant as it was, would be hard to keep going at that level. And so inevitably, when it fell to like 3%, they'd say, we just solved inflation. Inflation's down 7%. Well, it's not. Let's think of how this works. Let's do some hypotheticals here. Let's say that we'll just use nice, easy numbers because I'm not very good with math. Let's say that bread on average is $1 a loaf, right? And Biden comes into office. Now let's look at two different scenarios. Scenario one is we will say that bread, in both scenarios, we'll say at the end of the 4-year term of Biden, it's gone from $1 a loaf to $5 a loaf, right? And in scenario one, it goes up $1 every year. So inflation, 2020 to 2021 would be 100%. It was $1, now it's $2. The price has doubled. The next year, it went from 2 to 3. That's a 50% increase. They would be able to say inflation fell 50%. Small concern to you, the person who's trying to feed your family, that's paying triple what you were when Biden came into office. Then the next year it would go up, 33%, and so on. And then the fourth, it would go up $1 each year. They would say, see, we're beating inflation. Now the other scenario is, let's say that it goes up to $5 a loaf the first year. That's a 500% increase in inflation. And then it stays there for the next 3 years. They would say, look how great we've done. We've beaten inflation, 0% for 3 years. That's unheard of. But at the end of the 4 years, you're still paying 5 times more. The reason that it looks like inflation isn't that bad is because the baseline is so fucking high. Because inflation was so bad for so long. So yes, when the average price of everything went up 10 to 15%, then you say, oh, but this year only went up 3% on top of that. You're still paying way more. You're still paying like 18, 20% more than you were when he came into office. But I accurately predicted that's how they'll end inflation. It'll be so bad for so long that when it falls to just kind of bad, they'll say, see, we're doing it. And the average person doesn't understand. It's like when they say, we slashed the budget. They don't slash the budget. What they do is slash the increase. So they'll increase the military budget by 5% every year. So let's say it's $1 trillion. Thank you so much, turning the frogs gay. Thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate it. Right? Let's say the military budget's $1 trillion and it goes up, by $1 billion every year or $10 billion every year. And then one year they're like, oh, we'll only increase it $5 billion this year. They'll go, we slashed the budget. No, you just slashed the rate of increase. That's what's going on with inflation. You didn't stop inflation. Inflation's not down. The rate of inflation has decreased because the baseline is so much higher because the rate of inflation was so high. That's what happened. And it's pathetic. That's their argument. Now, well, the economy's doing great. Right. Tell that to all my friends and family. Doing great for them. The way they can manipulate the numbers is astounding. How people believe this shit. But I digress. So isn't it funny, though, to hear them say that now? We're focused on policy. We on the left, we're not focused on stupid things like corruption investigations. You're literally locking up your major opposition as we speak. Stormy Daniels, and he talked to Brian Kemp on January 6th. They had a TV show producer do the January 6th hearings live on television. And those are the people telling us, soon as it's okay, corruption on your side, they're like, oh, of course, because we have policies. Go ahead, Ninja, with your question. It's hilarious to me. So that was strategy one. Strategy one is, we're just going to ignore the whistleblower thing, and then something about Trump will come up, and then we'll talk about that. Strategy 2, which I've seen Destiny employ, and some other people, this is an even better strategy. I love this. Right? What's the other thing you heard about the whistleblowers? Particularly, not today so much, yesterday. If you wouldn't have seen anything about the whistleblowers, if you only followed mainstream media and some left-wing people, there would have been one thing you noticed. I'll give you a clue. It had to do with something Marjorie Taylor Greene did. Anybody see that? It's the same line they've used about the laptop and about the investigation into Hunter Biden from the onset. They've used this line over and over and over again. They'll say, this is just about Hunter Biden's dick pics. Oh, here we go. Marjorie Taylor Greene tried to introduce a picture of Hunter Biden having sex. Oh, my God. That's all this is about. That's all it's about. Over and over and over, I see that line repeated. No, Clino, not really. I'm being intentionally vague. Clino's my wife, by the way. I told her, I was like, I don't know if I should stream tonight because I'm debating this shit. Let's see what you got here. So I'm being kind of vague. What's Jeffrey say? Oh, it got community noted. Here we go. Hakeem Jeffries, one of the brainiacs there. What is he? He's the minority leader, right, in the House. Inflation's down for the 12th consecutive month at its lowest level in 2 years. Lower costs require negative inflation. A failing rate of inflation means that prices are increasing less than before. The latest government report shows the annual inflation at 3%, which means prices are 3% higher. Yeah. Than the 10% that they were the previous year. Exactly. But I predicted. Of course that's what they would do. So, before my wife rudely interrupted me here. Sure, are there people that are concerned about the legitimate crimes of Biden using drugs and being with hookers and stuff? Sure. If this was Trump's kid, if this was Don Jr. and we found cocaine and we found, a laptop with pictures of him sleeping with hookers and, all this shit, Would it be a national story? Of course it would. The same people now, 90% of the same people that are saying, I don't... You know how I know it would be a national story? Because they foamed at the mouth over an alleged P-tape of Donald Trump. They said, oh boy, that's compromise. That P-tape, if it exists, my God, Russia could use it to blackmail Trump. So oh my God, that's crazy. Well, now we know the president's son. There are legitimate tapes. Who knows doing what? What kind of crimes, what kind of sex acts. But all of a sudden it's, oh, that's personal. We don't give a shit about that. Oh, how dare you. That's petty. Ninja, did I miss your question? If Trump lands the election, do you think America will prove as a whole? I don't know. Maybe. If he disbands the FBI. Yeah, inflation up 18% if we use their metrics since Biden took office. But he's doing it. He's beating inflation. But having said that, I don't really give a shit about Hunter Biden's cocaine usage. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about him with hookers. If he's with underage hookers, I care a little more. But is it entirely possible that a person could be a really crappy person and it has nothing to do with his family? Yeah, that's possible. Maybe Hank grows up and he becomes president of the United States. And they're like, yeah, but look at your drunken dad singing rap songs karaoke the other day. I think there was an N-word in that song he sent. Should Hank be judged for that? I don't think so. Hi, Hank. What's up, buddy? I'm glad you're listening. Dad'll be home sometime. Now I gotta watch the swears, right? I care more about the obvious cover-up from the FBI, for example, in the Secret Service, hiding the fact that, he threw a gun in a garbage can outside a school. They're blatantly covering up the cocaine in the White House. That I care more about, because that's the institution itself engaged in double standards and corruption. Oh, he's talking about Wiggles again. That's funny. Maybe he means our friend Wiggles. I can go back to swearing. Shit. Fuck. There we go. That's... But it's always been more about Joe Biden to me. Well, it's always... Joe Biden's secondary, actually. It's always about the FBI, their double standard. That's what it's been about. For me. I've been consistent. I'm the only person I know who's been railing against corruption at places like the FBI, the Russia collusion hoax, all of that stuff from the onset, that has said, I really don't give a shit if Hillary gets charged for her server. I said that. Why? Because it's probably a crime that a lot of people in Washington commit. And it's rarely charged. People improperly handling classified information. Now, I believe that Hillary Clinton intentionally had that server so that she could withhold evidence or withhold communications from things like Freedom of Information Act requests and things like that. But I can't prove that. I was more concerned with the double standard in the FBI and how they handled the investigation into Hillary's team versus how they handled the investigation into Trump's team. That's far more concerning. I've been consistent on that. Thank you. Yeah, Average Debate Enjoyer. I saw some of your posts on Twitter. Thanks for coming, man. Appreciate it. I don't think you were wrong with most of the stuff you were saying, but I wasn't necessarily disagreeing, right? So we'll get to that in a second. We'll get to the 1023 and stuff like that. That's the bigger story. I don't know how much clearer I could make this. I go onto a panel. I debate about Donald Trump being charged with the documents. I'm debating Dylan Burns, and I'm debating Destiny, and I'm debating, who's that other chick? Brianna Wu or whatever, right? I'm debating them, and they're just like, Trump to Trump, 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 Trump. And I'm like, and Connor was running the panel, and he was like, do you think there's a double standard? I was like, absolutely, there's a double standard. I don't know how I can make it more clear than this. I don't really give... If Trump goes to jail, my life basically doesn't change. If Hillary goes to jail, my life basically doesn't change. individual politicians, even at the highest level, only exist in a short time frame. The institutions behind them that are getting increasingly powerful, that are running the show, exist in perpetuity. The FBI will be there if things don't change long after Donald Trump's on this mortal coil. Same with Hillary. Same with Bernie. Same with Bush. It'll still be here. And if we allow them to have increased powers to put their thumb on the scale of elections and interfere and censor people that they don't like and lock up people of political opinions they don't like, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. That's what my issue is. I don't give a shit. That's why they think they could respond to me by just saying this. Yeah, I guess they should investigate Hillary. Maybe they should have charged Hillary. That's not responsive to what I'm saying. Okay, if you believe that, then what do you think about the double standard? What's up, Buzzard Bob's body double? That's my issue. That's my singular issue that I focus on. Does that mean that if Biden or Hillary or Trump or McConnell or insert any politician committed some crime, they shouldn't be held accountable? No, I'm not saying that. But that's far less my concern than the institutions themselves. That's it. So their response to me is never topical to what I'm worried about, to the concerns I have. And it's just a cheap trick. Like, when it gets right down to it, why is it when I could debate someone who's like a lawyer like Pisco, why is he so adamant at covering up for these double standards? Because that's the one thing they can't give up. Think about it this way. How many populist presidents have we had? Let me rephrase the question. Regardless of what you think of Trump or what you think of any president, right? Regardless, how many presidents do you think the establishment, the FBI, the Washington bureaucracy, how many do you think that they were worried would challenge them in your lifetime? Thank you, Average Debate Enjoyer. I appreciate the follow. I really do. Buzzard Bob had a stroke. He had to retire from... That's a bummer. Feel better. That's crazy. It doesn't matter if Trump was anti-establishment or not. All that matters is that was the first time that they lost control of the narrative and someone that was a potential outsider got significant power that could harm them. And they can't accept that. That's what all of this is about. It's not about Trump the person. It's about sending the signal. We almost fucked up. We let some guy get in office that could have showed our corruption. Thank God we were able, through our relationships with the media and with social media companies and the fact that Trump picked poorly and put stupid people around him that helped cover up the corruption. Thank God we were able to get through those 4 years. Never again. That's the lesson. That's what they're doing. They're making sure that anyone that could potentially get power that might challenge their authority is stymied before they get there. They want to send... Don't even try it. Don't try it. That's what they're doing. That's the message they're sending. It's because... I'm explaining this, Average Debate Enjoyer. Now, if that's one... Donald Trump's not even, by a long shot, my favorite politician. In fact, I criticize Trump all the time. But I can say he's the first president that I thought that they were like, oh shit, we might not have control over this guy. I liked Ron Paul. They didn't give him a chance. They believed their own hubris with Trump. They thought that Hillary had a 99.9% chance of winning, just like with Brexit. Same shit. Yeah, give the plebes their vote. They'll think they did something. We'll put our thumb on the scale enough that our side will win, and we can say, yay, democracy, and move on. Oops. What's up, Kane? How you doing? Glenn's a Biden supporter. We'll change you. Thanks, Average Debate Enjoyer. I appreciate it. Now, the other side, establishment politicians, Republican, Democrat, whatever, they're a dime a dozen. So what happens is, if you're one of the people that favor that, if you're a lefty right now, lefties, because it's not really a left-right issue. It is, as I've explained many times on the show, but that's not the big divide. The big divide is establishment versus populist, or those that challenge the establishment. That's the big divide. Because there are people on the left that challenge it. RFK, Jimmy Dore, Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald, Tulsi Gabbard at one point. They don't give a shit. The problem is, the reason that I blame the left so often is because before, the hedge back against the establishment institutional power was sort of grassroots culture. Grassroots is not really the right word, but culture, like counterculture. And counterculture had a lot of like young people and artistically minded people and things like that. So think like Vietnam protest and things like that. Well, they've successfully made those counterculture people the main culture. And they support the corruption. That's the left. The left supports it. The left went from criticizing these agencies and the corruption in the lead up of the Iraq War to electing Barack Obama, 8 years of him, where he could do no wrong because he's hip, he's cool, he's black, yay, he's the best. Basically just continuing Bush's foreign policy, which they said Bush was a war criminal murderer for. But now they supported it because Barack Obama's cool. So when he does it, it's cool. All of a sudden, Michael Moore and Bruce Springsteen, they weren't so vocal. I used to have these albums, Punk Against Bush. By the way, did you see Anti-Flag disbanded because all their braggadocious and, all their videos they put out? They're a punk band, right? It was like Anti-Flag. Well, you could figure out what they're about. Not big fans of the U.S. government. They had one song, I remember, when they put rape statistics out. Well, they disbanded because the lead singer is accused of sexual assault. Anyways, I don't know anything. He could be falsely accused. I don't know. But I thought that was interesting. All of a sudden, though, most of those bands pretty quiet when Obama was there. And then when Trump was like, who said some things that were very warmongerish. Why don't we just take their oil? That's bad. He bombed Syria. That's bad. But he also said things like, why the fuck are we enemies of Russia? Why aren't we fighting Al-Qaeda with them? That's good. Right. Good question. If the enemy's violent Islamic terrorism, why are we working with violent Islamic terrorists to go after Assad and Russian interests? Doesn't make sense to me. Lead singer of Rammstein as well. That's a bummer. I liked Rammstein. Could be bullshit, but that's what he was doing. He was criticizing the FBI, the intel agencies. He was talking about like, well, why are we in conflict with Russia and Syria? Shouldn't we be working with them to eliminate ISIS? That's good. And oh boy, the neocon Republican Fox News crowd, they didn't like that. And the CNN New York Times crowd, they didn't like that shit. Oh boy, that was bad. And Chuck Schumer came out and said, Trump, why are you picking a fight with the FBI? They'll find 6 ways from Sunday getting back at you. Right. Exactly. The most powerful elected leader in the world has to be fearful of the bureaucrats that he's supposed to have power over. Right. Admitted by his opposition. Chuck Schumer. Left's perfectly fine with it. It's all it took. Now the anti-war left is the most pro-war. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Send those cluster bombs. Keep that Ukraine conflict going. Woo! Whatever the FBI tells me. We can't criticize the FBI. They should have the right to censor people that they disagree with. They're not doing it, but if they are doing it, it's great. Thanks, Goku. My beard never looks so good. I'm thinking of getting a haircut this week. My hair's not looking the greatest. Look at that bald asshole. So that's why I blame the left, because they're what allows the corruption to become so entrenched. They're why there's almost no pushback, because every major institution, whether it be the traditional, like the corporations or, those types of things, or it be the more artsy, like the academia and Hollywood, they're all on the same page now. Totally touting the same bullshit line. More power for them, more power for the government, more censorship, more forcing you to control you, telling you can't go to work, telling you have to take this medicine, telling you got to send more money to keep some war going on in Ukraine, can't question it, telling you that white people are bad, telling you that men are bad, telling you that Christians are bad. All the same bullshit from almost every institution. That's why I blame the left, because most of them are totally fine with it. And that average debate enjoyer is where we get to people like Pisco. It's easy for them to say this. Think how this thought process would go. Like, let's take something simple. Bill Clinton's credibly accused of sexual impropriety, I'm not talking about oral sex with Monica Lewinsky. I'm talking about, like, raping Juanita Broderick. She accused him of legitimate rape, right? And there were tons of other stories that, by the left's definition of inappropriate sexual aggression, certainly Bill Clinton would meet any metric that we have today. Yet when these questions were brought up in real time, when it mattered, when Clinton was president, no, it's all bullshit. And now they're like, yeah, that was bad, we should have did something, but it's over with now. Go watch that panel I did with Brianna, Destiny, and Dylan. Same shit. Yeah. I guess, okay, Hunter Biden, whatever, it's done with that. Hillary Clinton, yeah, maybe they should have charged her. That's what Brianna said. You don't believe that. But there's so many politicians that tout that same line. What do they give a shit if one goes down? They don't care. You think they give a shit? You think they'd even give a shit if Joe Biden ends up resigning and goes to jail? They don't give a shit. If it means taking Trump down, too. Take down 100% of the people that is a thorn in the side of the establishment that had power. And we'll give up 0.0001% in the fact that we have 1,000 people like that, we'll give up one. That's we're reasonable. We don't have a problem. But what they can't do is talk about the institution itself being corrupt. Maybe Goku, remind me. They can't do that. They can't be like, the entire House of Cards is built on these institutions that are corrupt and are cheering for the same side that I am. They can't do that. And so, that's how you get someone who, like Pisco, seems to be a person that's look, and I know, like, I kind of like Pisco, to be honest. I think that he is the type of guy that I would be happy to be neighbors with and get drunk and yell at him about politics all the time. It's easy, right? What's up, real redneck? It's easy, by the way. Why wouldn't I like talking to people like Pisco? I crush him every time I talk to him. It's fucking great for me. I don't care, right? I mean, he doesn't seem like the worst person in the world. So I can admit, I don't think he's, like, overly stupid or anything. That's not what it is. But he has to prop up these institutions and the lies that these institutions tell. So he has to say things that are abjectly, insanely, transparently fucking stupid. For example, he has to say things like, well, maybe the people of Martha's Vineyard, they couldn't support 40 illegals for more than 48 hours. They just couldn't do it. They don't have the resources. That's an argument that I argued with him for 3 hours one night about. So, like, basically one of the top 5% of wealthiest districts in this country, they can't support 40 illegals for more than 48 hours. My shitty broke town could do that. But maybe that was what happened. Really? Maybe, huh? That's how, one of the first times I debated him, I said, this is way back in like 2019. I said, here's a guy who's going, at that point he was in law school. I said, Pisco, let me ask you a question. Should the FBI attempt to verify information before they use it to get a FISA warrant to spy on someone? And let me give you an interpretation of what Pisco did. Should the FBI have to verify before getting well, the fact of verification, the forms of verification could take when it comes to investigations. You have to understand the investigative bodies. There's a lot that's going on with them, and there's discretion that occurs between these bodies and things like that. The attempts at verification could take many different steps. There could be things like trying to contact... 5 minutes of that shit. I sat there patiently, and at the end of it, I was like, notice I didn't get a yes or a no there. That should be a simple yes, of course. Especially if it's a president or a presidential campaign. Yes, before the FBI literally spies on them and violates their Fourth Amendment and treats them like an enemy spy. Sure, they should take a step back and go, is this evidence that we're using to spy, is it true? Can we verify any of it? They should do that. That seems like they should do that to Biden. They should do that to Trump. They should do that to McConnell. They should do that to Hillary. To everyone. I'm equal on that. Yes. If I come up with a document tomorrow that I pay for that says, oh boy, Joe Biden sold nuclear secrets to China, I don't expect the FBI to take that and say, good enough for us, we're going to spy on Biden. And I'd say, oh boy, I dislike Biden, so that's good for me. No, I would say, well, no, don't do that. You should look into it, you should verify, and then if you're able to verify, absolutely you should use that to increase the pressure in the investigation. Maybe getting wiretaps, FISA warrants, things like that. But no, not our FBI. They got the warrant twice before they sought to talk to the primary subsource. Average Debate Enjoyer says, I debated Pisco the other day, and when I called him out in the factually inaccurate statements, he tried to define the word nothing. I got cut off pretty much every time I tried to talk for Harry Potter analogies because he didn't know the facts around January 6th of the hearings. I won't engage with that dude again. Yeah, I mean, I feel your frustration, but who are you going to engage with if not him? At least he'll sort of talk about the issue somewhat. Who else are you going to talk to? A bunch of people on the left that just say, that's debunked. That's whataboutism. Okay. I find, for me, I like debating him. Now, I'm in a different position than you maybe because I'm a little more established. So I just tell him to fuck right off and walk out. And he doesn't want to do that with me because I feel that, like, he's talked before and I have somewhat of an audience. And so I'm not saying that makes it right. I'm just saying. But for me, even someone that I think is a partisan hack, which I do think Pisco is that, at least the fact that he's attempting to make arguments strengthens my argument. Because I hear them, then I come up with answers to that. Yeah, I hear that, Goku. Thoughts on weed legalization? Probably for it. Though, let's be honest, I used to be total libertarian on this, and now I'm not so sure when it comes to harder drugs and things like that. But a topic for another day. Why don't we stop the FBI being corrupt with their drug running and shit like that in the CIA? That'd be great. So, yeah, a lot of it's exposing their hierarchy. I do it for my own enjoyment. I like debating. I like arguing. That's my number one reason for doing it. I don't think I'm going to convince 99.99% of the people I debate or their audience at this point. They're entrenched. I'll get to that in a second. Remind me of that. They can't change. At this point, they've cheered for stuff that's so heinous that they can't be like, most of them can't be like, shit, I was wrong. Like, literally, if you cheered for locking down children and now you see their death rates increasing and their education rates decreasing and all these problems that they're having, for what? For no benefit. You have to entrench yourself. You can't be like, yeah, I cheered for that and look how bad it was. They can't do that. So they have to be like, no, it was necessary with what we knew at the time. No, all the studies were quite clear. It was bad to do so. Europe knew it. You know, I saw an excellent video the other day of this, you know, I believe she's a feminist, but she was talking about why the debate about the mutilation of children with trans surgeries and shit like that for children, it will never end. And that's because people did it to their kids. So if you were 30 and you had a biological boy and you put them on hormone blockers at 9 and then they get surgery at 14 or 16 or whatever, and all the science points to like that was incredibly harmful and blah, 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 and now they have problems the rest of their life. As a parent, you can't be like, oh, I mutilated my child. You can't do it. So for the rest of your life, you're going to be like, hypocrisy. Yeah, I got you. So that's ultimately what's going on with Pisco and them. They can't admit the institution itself is corrupt, so they'll defend it. They'll say things like, well, I don't see a double standard. And they'll say, prosecutorial discretion. That's what they'll say. Yeah, average debate enjoyer. You can call anytime, man. Unfortunately, I haven't been streaming much because of my ridiculous work schedule. But once we get some people hired here at my job and I get back to a normal schedule, debate, conversation, whatever, the show goes better when I'm talking to someone 99% of the time. I enjoy it more. I think the audience enjoys it more. I've debated people on the left that I thought were incredibly good faith and had I find that I'm usually reciprocal in my energy. If someone comes in and they're being bad faith or they're name calling and shit, I'll do it back to them. If someone calls in and it's a respectful conversation, even if we disagree, that's usually how it ends up. But that's what's going on. So all of these obvious double standards, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. When I was on this panel, right, and so I'll say this one thing, and then I'll go to what I wanted to talk about today, right? Which I haven't got there yet. Now, brief caveat here for a second. I know that this was about, you down with 1, 2, 10, 2, 3? Yeah, you know me. You know, the 1023 that Grassley released. But I'm not going to talk a lot about it because I'm debating Pisco Saturday. And it's going to be me and Counterpoints versus Pisco and I think Ruminate. You may remember Ruminate from the time he debated me on vaccine mandates. And then he admitted, I'm not well read enough on this, so I'm just going to leave. I said, okay. Then he went in Destiny Stream and said, yeah, I debated this guy robnoerr and he just kind of blew me out of the water. So I'm glad Ruminate's coming back for round 2. That should be fun. Looking forward to it. I assume him and Pisco, hopefully right now, or whoever, if it's a different partner for Pisco, I hope they're researching from now until Saturday as hard as they can. I'll be working. I will not be researching. I'll be working. Here will be my preparation for the debate. I'll go click. I'll turn the computer on 5 minutes before I come on, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I got to title the video and shit. That'll be me. I did see the slightest bit with Destiny debating JQ. It didn't sound like he did very good, but I saw like 5 minutes, so it's hard to make a judgment in that amount of time. The left can't debate. Many on the left can't debate the JQ question because they're unwilling to admit that some of the things that are said are true. For example, there is a large movement in this country to demonize white people. Does that mean that we should hate all Jews and say that they're all involved in this or that we need a white nationalist country? No, of course not. But so many on the left can't admit it. So the clip I saw is Destiny being like, what censorship that occurred, blah, 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 blah. Dude. You think Nick's smarter than Destiny? I haven't seen Nick enough. I think Nick's a shithead, but I haven't seen him enough. He might be very smart. I don't know. Anyways, back to what I was talking about. So, anyways, because I'm doing this debate Saturday, I didn't want to talk a lot about it because it'll be a rehash Saturday then. But that's where we're at. So, Pisco today, we find out from these whistleblowers, the IRS whistleblowers yesterday, that there's a bunch of allegations that they had crimes, felonies of Hunter Biden that they basically weren't allowed to prosecute, that they were told by their leader, look, the DOJ stepped in, that the DOJ tipped off Hunter Biden about investigations. They weren't allowed to see the laptop. They weren't allowed to personally interview Hunter Biden. A bunch of bad shit. Then today, the 1023, which is sort of the form that confidential human sources get interviewed on by the FBI, came out. So I'll put the link. You could read it. So I'll put this in the chat. It's just some guy on Twitter, DC Drano, but he's got the actual images of the document from Grassley. I'll try to just summarize if I can. A confidential human source that allegedly the FBI has used before in trust says that he was called by Zlochevsky. Zlochevsky is the leader of Burisma that Hunter Biden's on the board of directors for. He was called by Zlochevsky to sit in this meeting, and in the meeting they basically said, Hunter Biden's stupid, we hired him, we paid him $5 million, and we paid his dad $5 million to get this prosecutor, Victor Shokin, fired. That's basically... is there a subscribe button on Kick? I don't know if I have enough followers to have subscribers yet on Kick, Real Redneck. But thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate the attempt. Yeah, I saw that, Rafa. The Jason Aldean song. But thank you, Real Redneck. So that, in a nutshell. Then we saw another document that was released. And that document was equally interesting. And what it talked about was the FBI task force, the Foreign Influence Task Force, the FITF, the now leader of it, saying that actually the FBI knew that task force, when they were talking to social media, knew that the laptop was real. And that's interesting because that's something that you always hear. In fact, someone on Twitter today, and hopefully I'll be able to show you this. They're like, Rob's a liar. Rob has all these talking points. He's a liar. For example, he's full of shit about all this. For example, the agent that talked to Facebook didn't know about the Hunter Biden laptop. Didn't know about it. Didn't know that they had that. First, you think it was just one agent? That's it. So when I say the FBI they were sitting on the Hunter Biden laptop, they knew that it was real, and yet they were pressuring social media saying you got to censor Russian disinformation, and they were specifically in Aspen they had a workshop. I don't know if it was the FBI or one of the other FISA, one of these other agencies. They had a workshop with social media people like Twitter, Facebook, etc., where they said, here's some hypothetical Russian disinformation that could come out, and we'll talk about what to do about it. Let's say hypothetically that documents about Hunter Biden come out, that allegedly Hunter Biden, well, that's probably a Russian hack. Wink, wink. Then a couple weeks later, oh boy, here's the New York Post story, Hunter Biden laptop story, and social media is like, oh, this must be Russian disinformation. This is almost the exact scenario the FBI told us would be Russian disinformation. Yeah, 51 agents, right. But this person responds to me and goes, that one agent didn't know. You're full of shit, and I can prove it, because I said like 15 things in this post, and they're like, and I can prove you're full of shit. It's all been debunked, and here's an example. That FBI agent that talked to Facebook didn't know. I said, really? Okay. So instead of going through and telling me where I'm full of shit, you give one example. Let's see if I'm full of shit. Well, this document that was released today was from testimony from the woman currently in charge of the Foreign Influence Task Force of the FBI, the agency that was working with social media, and she testified that at the time, yes, that agency knew that the Hunter Biden laptop was real. And yet, from time immemorial, when I was on Adam and Sitch's show, and when I debate Destiny, and when I debate people on Twitter, and I'm arguing with them, that's one of the talking points. They've gone to the well over and over and over. Oh, well, see, the FBI, it's just this, it's such this behemoth beast that when some agents are compelling social media to censor disinformation, they didn't know that other agents knew that it wasn't disinformation. They didn't know. You see? Isn't that interesting? Now we have testimony from the woman currently in charge. That's not true. Where are they? Where are all the people? They just go, nah, you're stupid. You scallop. You're full of shit. That's it. They don't look at the fucking facts. They just say, it's been debunked. Where was it debunked? Well, we said it was debunked a year ago. Right, I know you said that, but you never debunked it. You made bullshit claims. And what they'll do is they look at everything in a vacuum. This is what Pisco does, right? By the way, what the Inspector General did. They'll look at everything in a vacuum, right? And they'll say, is it possible that the FBI could have made this particular decision and not been corrupt? Sure, it's possible. For example, the FBI could theoretically, or a cop, right? Let's say a cop. Let's say that a cop sees you speeding, snorting cocaine off your dashboard. Right? Is it possible that that cop could have had a legitimate reason for not pulling you over? Sure, it's possible. For example, they could have been pursuing, on their way to an active shooting. Right? Yeah, hypothetical. Now let's say that happens 20 times. At some point you have to be like, wait a minute. The chances of that occurring over and over, of this particular cop constantly giving you favorable treatment, seems ridiculous. But they'll say, but wait, we can't look at it that way. We just look at each individual situation. Right, we know the FBI doesn't look. Let me give you an example, average debate enjoyer. So one of the times I debated Pisco, Destiny was moderating, which was basically just me debating Pisco and Destiny, because that's who was chosen as the moderator. Destiny is afraid to debate me on this stuff himself because he knows he'll get blown out. So he pretends to be an impartial moderator and then just takes Pisco's side. I don't give a shit. I'll debate them 10-on-1. I don't give a fuck. It doesn't matter to me. And to Destiny's credit, they gave me a chance to talk. That's all I was asking for. Right? Moderator could disagree with me. Don't give a shit. I had a fair opportunity to talk. That's all I wanted. Right? So let's take this situation. Right? The Hillary Clinton investigation. Now, with Hillary's the investigation into her, the part that I thought obviously was a crime that should have been charged was when her team deleted subpoenaed emails. Now, Pisco will defend this. And the way he'll defend this is say, well, if you look at the IG report, this is what the FBI said. They didn't want to call a grand jury because they thought that this guy would lawyer up. His name, by the way, I want to say Nada. That's not it. That's the guy connected to Trump. His name was Paul Combetta, Platte River Networks. Basically, the FBI knew that it was only 2 or 3 people that would have been able to delete these emails. They testified that they thought that it was this guy that was lying, but they weren't able to prove it. So instead of charging him, because they thought he would lawyer up if they went to a grand jury, they decided to give him an immunity deal. So they said, here's a low-level guy that we could all but prove committed some crime. Instead of charging him and then putting him through the ringer for years, like we did Michael Flynn and dozens of people connected to Trump, where you charge them with these crimes, the process is the punishment, just like they're doing with all the January 6 people. Everybody knows that. Even if they could beat the charges at the end, the point is to make their life hell because they're being charged by the FBI. And then hopefully they'll want to cooperate. That's exactly what they're doing with this Nada guy that's connected to Trump with the document Mar-a-Lago raid case. It's exactly what they're doing. Pisco knows it. Every one of us know it, particularly if you're involved in the legal field. You know this. You know this is par for the course. Go after the low-level guy. Get him with crimes you think you could prove. Try to get him to flip on the big guy. That everybody knows. But for some reason, with the Hillary investigation, it was give all the low-level people that we could prove committed crimes immunity. And then say, do you have anything you'd like to say? And they say, nah, I did it all myself. And they're like, sounds good. Right? So this is what they believe. Well, here's what happened. 6 months before Paul Combetta deleted these subpoenaed emails, he was told to delete these emails before they were subpoenaed by Cheryl Mills, Hillary's confidant and lawyer. He forgot to do it. 6 months later, he's told, hey, these emails are subpoenaed. Get them together and send them. And he goes, oh, shit, I forgot 6 months ago I was supposed to delete those. So even though I know it's a crime, I'm going to delete them now. That's what I'm going to do. And Pisco and Destiny are like, well, what can you do? They gave him immunity. I'm like, okay, one question, though. According to that same IG report, it claims that 2 or 3 days before he deleted the emails, Paul Combetta, he met with Cheryl Mills. That was on the record books. And they said, what was that conversation about? You know what his answer was? I don't remember. And the FBI said, you don't remember? You don't remember? 3 days before you deleted it. The same woman that told you to delete it 6 months ago, you talked to her again and you don't remember what you talked about and then 3 days later you delete it? You don't remember? Okay, good enough for us. Thank you so much for your help. We'll see ya. And then Pisco and Destiny go, there's no proof that anyone else ordered him to do this. There's no proof. No shit, because he said, I did it myself and I don't recall any conversations. Good enough for the FBI. Good enough for Pisco. Good enough for Destiny. Good enough for all the lefties. Thanks, Lavin. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs. I really appreciate it. You see how that works? Well, now there's no evidence. It's true. I have no evidence that Hillary personally ordered him. I don't, because the FBI chose to not look. That's what happened. And then it allows people like Pisco and Destiny and Anderson Cooper and Jake Tapper and Rachel Maddow and the writers of the New York Times and fucking all the Democrats. It allows them to be like, there's no evidence. Right, because the FBI chose to not look. Now, consider what they're doing in the Trump case. They're going after Trump's assistant, Nada, throwing the book at him. Charging him. He's looking at like 70 years or something, the rest of his life in prison. The media's like, oh boy, if this guy flips. Huh. And what Pisco and them will always be able to say when you pin them on that, he'll act like that's reasonable. Well, he didn't remember. What were they supposed to do? They'll always use this phrase or some form of it. Prosecutorial discretion. Well, prosecutors could decide who to prosecute and who not. And so every time it just so happens people connected to Trump, throw the book at them. Michael Flynn, he lied. Throw the fucking book at him. Really, because Peter Strzok's 302 that we could read shows that he didn't lie. He was asked if he talked to Kislyak and brought up sanctions like 3 times, and the final time he said, I don't remember, I could have. That's not a lie of saying I don't remember. But when I bring that up to Destiny and particularly Pisco, Pisco goes, bullshit, he remembered. It wasn't that long ago. Oh, but Paul Combetta didn't remember, and that was fine. You see? He remembered bullshit. Throw the book at him. You see? You see how that works? 51 former intel agencies, including former heads of the NSA and CIA, come out and say it was Russian disinformation and reeks of Russian disinformation. Pisco, the Destinies, the lefties of the world, they said, well, they're private citizens. They can do what they want. And I'm sure they were acting completely properly when they were in charge of these institutions. Sure. And over and over and over. Paul Manafort gets charged with failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. The indicting document says he worked with two groups, Group A and Group B. Group A was a Republican lobbying firm called Mercury LLC. Group B was, drumroll please, the Podesta Group, Hillary Clinton's campaign manager. That group committed the same crime with the same people as Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort gets charged with the crime. Podesta Group retroactively fills out paperwork. How's that the case? Papadopoulos misremembers a date. He gets charged. Cheryl Mills and Human Abedin lied about knowledge of the server, of Hillary Clinton's server. They testified that they had no knowledge until after her tenure as Secretary of State. However, emails show them discussing that server as far back as 2009. That's lying to the FBI. No problem, prosecutorial discretion. They chose not to charge them. You see? You see how it works? See how that works? Contempt of Congress? Oh boy, charge Steve Bannon. Eric Holder? Not so much. On and on and on and on. And every single time they'll say, in a vacuum, is it possible that you give Combetta immunity, but not Nada? Sure, I guess. You give Cheryl Mills immunity, but not Giuliani? Sure, I guess. And over and over and over and over and over. To the point where they're left arguing, well, yeah, I guess getting unverified opposition research to spy on the President of the United States when it was Trump, I guess that was okay. And I guess, remember, the entire, I can't believe how shitty, and it's because the Republicans in charge are part of the Uniparty. They don't actually want this shit coming to light. They don't want the people knowing how corrupt it is. But I can't believe that there aren't people with bigger audiences than me that aren't hammering this point home. Thank you, Chuckles. I appreciate the subscription. The entire Trump-Russia collusion investigation was based on this at its center. That Donald Trump tried to work with Russians to get dirt on his opponents and then possibly do like a quid pro quo where he would benefit those Russians. This motherfucker was trying to get dirt on Hillary Clinton from Russians. Oh boy, said the FBI, we're going to nail this prick and his team. Well, what's your evidence? Well, here's our evidence. Hillary's team got dirt on Trump from a suspected Russian spy. We're not going to verify it, and we're going to pay that suspected Russian spy, and we're going to use that to spy on Trump's team. And you're like, you might pause and be like, so wait a minute. So you're investigating Trump based on the allegation he's trying to get dirt on Hillary from Russians, and the way you're proving that is the fact that Hillary got dirt on Trump from Russians. That'd be like, I think my neighbor might break into my house, so I'm going to break into his house to prove that he might break into my house. That's what happened. That was the entire narrative. People lost their fucking minds, Democrats, for 4 years. Russia collusion, oh my God, that's like the biggest story in the world. Russia's interfering in our elections? Russian collusion? Oh my God, that'd be so damaging. That's an attack on our democracy. Well, now we know there was Russian collusion. Hillary's team, working with a suspected Russian spy named Igor Dushenko. The FBI knew it. Igor Dushenko was investigated in 2008, 2009 for being a Russian spy. Before the investigation concluded, Dushenko left the country. Then he comes back and he's working with Hillary's team. Instead of the FBI going, holy shit, wait a minute. The thing we're investigating Trump for, we actually know Hillary did it. We know she did it. She's doing it right now. She paid this Russian spy. Suspected Russian spy. No questions there. Where's the Democrats? Where's all the people that were shouting Russia collusion? Now we know it exists. Russia collusion exists. Well, that's different. When Hillary colluded with Russians, that was different. That was good collusion. Good stuff. And people like Pisco have to defend it. They have to. So, we'll get to this then. put out a post on Twitter. Because I don't have much time. I'm just on my phone at work. Put a post out about the 1023. Which again, let's go back to what that's saying. How many times have I debated? Right? The argument is as follows. Here's what's beyond dispute. Joe Biden issued a quid pro quo when he was vice president to Poroshenko, the then president of Ukraine. He said, fire this prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, who on paper, I know people will say, he wasn't really investigating Burisma. But on paper, in Ukraine, he was the person that was tasked with investigating Burisma. Burisma, the company, was its owner, Mykola Zlochevsky, not my words, it was the Obama-Biden administration that said he was a corrupt Russian oligarch. And yet Joe Biden's son worked for him, was a board of director on his company, gas company Burisma. We know that. We know that Hunter Biden had no expertise, didn't even speak the language, had no expertise in the energy markets. We know through emails, publicly confirmed, that they were basically saying, we want you to talk to people and lobby and blah, blah, blah. No one really fair disputes that. Of course, that's why they hired Hunter Biden, his name, right? Of course. We know that Joe Biden publicly admitted, I said fire that guy, or you're not getting this $1 billion. We know that Poroshenko said, from calls that have been released, look, we don't think the guy's corrupt, but I guess we'll fire him. We fired him. We know that Biden then said, okay, you can have your money. We know that the investigation was then kicked off to basically the Ukrainian FBI. It's called the NABU, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. We know that the NABU was financed by the Obama-Biden administration and was basically allies with them. And we know that they promptly buried the investigation into this corrupt Russian oligarch that Biden and Obama said was a pro-Russian oligarch. I had a simple position when all of this occurred. Ready? Ready for my controversial position? Ready? Anytime that a politician in this country uses sums of your tax dollars to force the firing of a prosecutor that is allegedly looking into crimes that their family member's business is doing, there ought to be an immediate independent investigation. I'll repeat. Let's say that the president, or that the president, the vice president, the senator, the representative's name is Bush, Paul, Ryan, McConnell, Clinton, Sanders, Biden, Stein. Any other name, Republican, Democrat, Independent, I don't give a shit. And that elected leader uses your tax dollars to force the firing of a prosecutor that happens to be looking into a company that politician's family is on the board of directors or is someone involved with that company, there ought to be an immediate independent investigation. Period. But Rob, what if everyone says that prosecutor was shitty? I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. The appearance of the conflict of interest itself is so remarkable that it requires, and if there was nothing illegal done, then so be it. But no, we can't have that. But I was told, oh, no. Everyone wanted. People in the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, Christina Lagarde said Shokin sucked. And people in the UK that were allies with Obama, they said Shokin sucked. So we're cool with it. We're cool. All of those people wanted Shokin fired, so we're cool. Who cares if they were looking into Burisma that Hunter Biden worked for? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Everyone wanted him fired. So notice that that's completely different than they're cheering for a special counsel Mueller into Trump. Remember when Republicans and Democrats both wanted Comey fired? And then Trump got a memo from Rosenstein to fire Comey. And then Trump fired Comey. And the Democrats said, oh, that's obstruction. We need a special counselor. What if I was to say, but everyone wanted him fired? You all wanted him fired. They'd say, that doesn't matter. The reason Trump may have fired him was for personal reasons. It didn't matter that other people wanted him fired for different reasons. For Trump, it could have been personal. That's why we need the special counsel. But not so with Biden. No. If the IMF wanted him fired, that's good enough for them. Sounds good. See how that works? And they can't answer this. They just deflect every time you bring that up. They're just like, oh. So that was always the argument. Victor Shokin, he wasn't investigating. He is corrupt. He wasn't investigating. He was corrupt. So that's good enough for us. Quid pro quo is totally legit. It couldn't have been personal. It's good enough for us. Good enough for us. And Shokin's testified that, no, I actually was investigating. I seized their assets, which we know that in February 2016 he seized their assets. If the investigation wasn't happening, why did he seize their assets? That seems like a very important part. This, you want to know what the answer is after much contemplation? Oh, here's your confusion, Rob. Yes, while it is true that Victor Shokin's office did freeze the assets of Zlochevsky in February 2016, actually it was just a technicality. See, here's what had happened. His assets had been frozen previously, and then there were some conflicts in court and some technicalities, so the assets were unfrozen for a while, and then Shokin in February reapplied the freezing of those assets. So there you go. He wasn't really investigating, though. Right, if he reapplied, it sounds like there was an investigation. How fucking stupid do you have to be? Well, it was a technicality, the freezing of the assets. But if that's true, then how can you explain that a week or two later, the lawyers for Burisma, they seem to be pissed about the freezing of assets? Because you know what they did? They sent an email to the Obama-Biden State Department. And in that email, it basically said this. It said, hey, we would like to have our lawyers sit down and meet with someone at the State Department. We feel that there's like all this confusion about corruption and stuff in these investigations, and we want to clear the air. We don't think that we did anything corrupt. By the way, Hunter Biden works here. Did you know that? Hunter Biden's here. Huh. That's odd. In that little email they sent, right out of the gate, they include Hunter Biden works here. And then, oh boy, they got that meeting at the State Department. And then here's where it gets crazier, right? Here's where it gets crazier. Then, right around that time, all of a sudden, Joe Biden really starts pressuring Ukraine to fire Shokin. Now, if there was no investigation, why is it that the lawyers for Burisma are so animated about getting a meeting with the State Department? There's no investigation. Would you have a fire under your ass? Being saying, Hunter Biden works here, Hunter Biden works here. If you're like, there's no investigation, nothing going on here. This guy Shokin's corrupt. He's in our back pocket. Why would you be going? If he's corrupt, why the fuck would you go to the United States? This is the narrative that they want you to believe. Actually, Shokin wasn't investigating Burisma. And Joe Biden was furious. I want my son's company to be investigated more. And the lawyers for Burisma are like, we're not comfortable with this. This corrupt prosecutor, Victor Shokin, that's not investigating. We demand someone who's not corrupt that will investigate us. We're going to the State Department in the United States. Who the fuck believes this shit? Pisco, Destiny, everybody on the left. That's what they believe. That's their argument. The freezing of assets was a technicality. There was no investigation. Burisma's lawyers just, they just on a whim decided to reach out and do the one thing that could eventually get them in trouble. Convince the United States to get rid of this corrupt prosecutor that's not prosecuting them. And Joe Biden was like, my son theoretically could be in trouble, and at the very least, even if he didn't commit crimes, stand to lose a bunch of money if Burisma gets shut down. I know, I want prosecutors that will investigate him stronger. Who believes this shit? But that's what they believe. And they'll take it to the grave until some official source says otherwise. They're like, nope, that's what happened. Same thing with Sitch and Adam when I was on their show. Same exact shit. Well, unless the FBI comes out and says that this was corrupt, we choose to believe it's not corrupt. Destiny went so far as to say, maybe that meeting between Burisma's lawyers, where they mentioned Hunter Biden's name, and the State Department, maybe they just talked about how they spelled the name Burisma. He said it in the fucking debate I had with him. That's what he said. That's how stupid they will sound to defend this corruption. That's the hill they have to die. They cannot admit to this corruption because the whole house of cards falls down then. They need the corruption. Their ideas are so bad that they have to rely on corruption and censorship and the weaponization of these institutions going after their opponents. They can't give it up. They can't. So that's where we were till this 1023. Now the 1023 claims, actually a confidential human source working for the FBI said he talked to Zlochevsky, who said, I paid Hunter Biden and his father $5 million apiece to get that guy fired. Now, is that true? We don't know. He also says there are tapes, etc. I don't know if this confidential human source is telling the truth. Maybe Zlochevsky said that, but he didn't. Maybe the confidential human source is lying. I don't know. Here's what I do know, though. That allegation was covered up by the FBI. They didn't release that information. And they've yet to release what they did in response to that. It's just been released today. So what was their response to that? So I said, it's damning. And Pisco responded to me. Let's take a look, shall we? Little blue area here is him screenshotting what I said. Unbelievably damning, I said. We now know a confidential human source told the FBI Burisma's corrupt owner paid Hunter and Joe Biden to get Ukrainian prosecutor was investigating Burisma fired, which Biden admitted to doing so in a quid pro quo. I've been saying this was the case for years, only to be called a conspiracy theories by those I debated. Here's Pisco's response. Robnoerr believes it was improper to start an investigation into Trump campaign based on the hearsay allegations of the Steele dossier, ignoring that the dossier wasn't the basis of Crossfire Hurricane. Now, all of a sudden, the same kind of evidence is not just enough to start an investigation, it's unbelievably damning for Biden. I'm so sick and tired of the nonstop double standards from Trump supporters. DOJ under Trump investigated these allegations. What more do you want? Where is the actual proof? Now, when I heard this, the first reactions would be like, let me explain why I'm not engaged in a double standard, which I get to that. But then I thought, let's say that I am. Here's what Pisco's doing here. He's saying the Steele dossier and this document are basically the same thing. Okay. And he's saying, Rob thought that we shouldn't have had this big investigation because of the Steele dossier, so therefore, why should we have this investigation over here? Let's say he's right about that. Let's say I accept his version of events. Let's say I accept his interpretation. Okay. Think about what Pisco did here then. So Pisco's like, okay, here's this robnoerr guy. Rob's got 30 people that watch him. 40 people watching right now across platforms. Thank you very much to each and every one of you. Even if you hate me, thanks for padding my numbers. So Rob, small streamer, I've debated him several times. And I think that basically it's analogous, the Steele dossier and this document. This 1023. They're analogous. Now with the Steele dossier, the FBI used that literally to get FISA warrants 4 times to spy on Trump's campaign and then Trump's presidency's team. With the 1023, they sat on it, did nothing. No FISA warrant. So Pisco lets this swirl around in his head. He's like, Hypocrisy! Hypocrisy, he yells. Oh, you see it too, Pisco, right? You see, if you think those things are analogous, how the FBI, on one hand, literally used it to spy on the President of the United States, and on the other hand, they basically covered it up and did nothing. You see that hypocrisy? He goes, no! Rob's hypocrisy. Wait, what? That's your concern right now? Your concern is little old me. Not that the institution that you've defended is not being corrupt for 3 years. Now in your own version, they have the document now that's analogous to the Steele dossier. Okay, then the treatment should be the same. Get a FISA warrant. Start raiding lawyers' homes in the middle of the night connected to this, right? Right? That's the standard. That was the standard set forth with the Steele dossier. That's what we do, right? No, Pisco doesn't say word one about that. Well, isn't that odd? Huh. Wow. How can that be? I mean, Pisco's calling out my double standards, but it's not like he would have a double standard, right? Because if he's being objective, he would say, well, now that the standard's been set with the Steele dossier, we know what we should do. We literally have the blueprint. We have the blueprint. My entire argument is the FBI's engaged in double standards. That's my argument. My argument's never principally been they shouldn't have investigated Trump. That's part of where it goes. But the kernel of truth that I'm really focused on is the FBI is corrupt and engaged in double standards. Pisco's now admitted it. Oh, this document's just like the Steele dossier. as such. That's all I want. It's in the past. What happened to Trump's in the past? Let's use that blueprint. Now, I warned in the past when it was happening in real time. Okay, if that's the standard, so be it. Any unverified opposition research? Now we know. Spy on him. FISA warrants. The whole campaign. The whole administration. Right? Raid lawyers in the middle of the night. Call CNN when they are taking Roger Stone out in his underwear. Do the same. Let's see it, right? That's the standard, correct? Maybe we'll get Ron Klain pulled out of his house in his underwear, right? With Breitbart there with cameras. Seems fair, right? Now, who do you think's being a hypocrite engaged in double standards? Me saying, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. Let's keep that standard rolling. Or Pisco saying, Rob's engaged in a double standard, but I'm just going to completely ignore. That's right, Slippery. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to be like, well, if Rob thinks that the Steele dossier was garbage, then this is equally garbage. No, my point is, the Steele dossier should have never been the reason to get a warrant to spy on Trump's team. But my standard doesn't matter. If that's what the standard is, then let's see it in both ways. But at Pisco's fine that it's only applied one way. And he'll say, well, it's prosecutorial discretion. Now, I'll get to debate Pisco on this Saturday. I'm sure he's listening right now, or if he's not, he'll go back and watch this because he knows he's going to get rocked this weekend. I'm debating him Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern. It'll be on my channel. I think Counterpoints will be there. I don't know who the moderator is, but it's me and Counterpoints versus Pisco and Ruminate. I think this will be the topic. We'll be talking about this sort of shit. So I'm sure that Pisco knows he's going to get rocked, so he's going to be doing research. He's going to be watching this video and stuff. So Pisco, if you're listening, whether it be live or in retrospect, you don't have a way out of this. What you're going to do, I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to say, well, actually, there are differences. Right, there are. And all of those differences will point to this being more evidence to warrant an investigation than any of the Trump-Russia collusion bullshit. But if you say they're analogous, how the fuck do you explain the total disparate treatment? Which has been my argument the entire time. And you know what it'll be at the end of the day? Well, it's prosecutorial discretion. That's what it'll be. We don't know. Maybe they did look. Maybe they did. That's what it'll be. But let's continue. I respond, I say, and here we have it first. What I want or believe is irrelevant is I don't have real power. Pisco is fine with the FBI's double standard here of covering up a confidential human source reporting Biden was bribed and yet launching an investigation into Trump based off unverified opposition resource sourced by a Russian spy accusing Trump of getting dirt on Hillary from Russians. Pisco responds, Rob got caught cold with his hypocrisy and has no response. Good day. I have plenty of responses, you'll see. That's just my initial response. Let's say everything you say is true, Pisco. Let's say that these documents are analogous, the 1023 accusing Joe Biden of forcing the firing of a prosecutor with your money that was looking into his son's company, taking bribes from a corrupt... That's way worse than anything Trump was accused of in the Trump-Russia collusion, right? That's what he's accused of. And that's analogous to the Steele dossier. Well, we know what the platform was with the Steele dossier. FISA warrants, spying... So even if you're right that I'm engaged in a double standard, cool, 2 points. I don't think I am, but let's concede for the sake of argument. Let's say I am. Cool, 2 points for you. You got it. Anyways, how about the FBI's double standard? Care about that? Oh, that's different. See? Thanks. I'm glad you like the stream. Well, of course, McClinebacker, that's one of the things they'll say. They're waiting for the January 6th Trump stuff, which is also horseshit, which they're hoping drops so they can change the narrative. I was already talking about that. But yeah, that's what they'll say. When they do shit in real time and you're like, okay, this is the standard then? They're like, yeah, Trump-Russia collusion, yeah, we got to do this. And then when it's like, okay, now chickens have come home to roost, they're like, nah, that was a long time ago. We should be held to the same standard we want to hold you to. Exactly. Because they're partisan acts. Yeah, I'm on kick too. Yeah, absolutely. That's where you came in. Right. So let's go on. Yeah, an average debate lover was there. Absolutely. I said, try to find Pisco's post about being fed up with the FBI's double standard and how they handled the Trump-Russia investigation to how they handled the investigation into the Biden family. Why no spies sent, like Stephen Halper, to Biden's team? Why no FISA warrant? Why no midnight raids of associates? Nope. Instead, he will feign that I, a small conservative streamer, have a double standard while he ignores the FBI's. But now let's get into the details of the difference between this and the Steele dossier. Secondly, unlike with the Trump-Russia hoax, which there was never any verifiable proof of its corruption claims, we actually know Hunter was taking money from corrupt foreign influence. We know his laptop was real, showed evidence of crimes, was censored by social media who were led to believe it was Russian disinformation by the FBI who knew it was real. We know this evidence showed emails claiming Joe Biden was in the room while this money was being bargained for. We know Biden issued a quid pro quo to force the firing of a prosecutor looking at the company his son worked for. We know that after the prosecutor was fired, the investigation into that company was closed with a small fine. And we now know that a confidential human source said that the FBI corrupt oligarch of that company admitted to paying Biden to get the prosecutor fired. And yet Pisco will have you believe me pointing out this corruption while condemning the FBI's corruption, condemning the FBI's corrupt Russia collusion investigation and the obvious double standard is me having a double standard. So let me break this down for you, right? What did we ever know about Trump-Russia collusion? What were the verified facts? Whether they be crimes or not. What was the smoke? Trump's team had met with Russian people. Okay, that's not much smoke. Sure, Hillary's team also had met with Russian people. Most administrations, campaigns for the national level of presidency meet with foreign people, including adversarial countries. And what else was there? Well, what were this claim? Like, people say so much about the Steele dossier was confirmed. Like what? Well, there's a guy named Donald Trump. Yeah, I guess. What the Steele dossier did was take publicly confirmed information. For example, they would be able to Google, Carter Page gave a speech at a Russian university. So they'd put that in the dossier. Oh, and then people go, oh, see? That's true. Carter Page did speak at a Russian university. Right, that's not a crime, nor does it suggest anything whatsoever. The criminal part of it's when he was offered 20% of Rosneft, a Russian gas company worth billions of dollars. So they offered Carter Page allegedly billions of dollars to basically help have back channels to Trump so that they could steal the election for Trump. Where's the proof of that? Well, there's none. There never has been. It's farcical on face value. They're going to pay this one low-level dude billions of dollars. That was the dossier's claim. The dossier also said things like Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, had this meeting in Prague. His passport showed that was bullshit. There were people that said he was at ball games in the time frame that was on video and ball games in time frame that was discussed. It said that there were meetings in like the FBI's field office or the Russian embassy in Miami. There is no Russian embassy in Miami. Just amateur bullshit. None of the things that were crimes or salacious like the PDA, none of it was every kernel true. But there were things like, but Carter Page did go to Russia once. Okay. That's it. Now, outside the Steele dossier, what was it that there was smoke that was like, yeah, maybe Trump. Well, Trump said, maybe we should be working with Putin. Great, okay. That's not a crime. When it comes to fighting ISIS, he's right, we should. And, pretty ominous there, huh? What else? What else was there? Well, Trump was pro-Russian. He said nice things about Putin. So, he sanctioned Russia. He sent Javelin missiles to Ukraine, which was something that I was against and that Obama refused to do. Thank you, Gizmo. He made the U.S. one of the, increased our production and exportation of fossil fuels, which really hurt Russia. Sanctioned their pipeline and things like that. What was it? Now, what was there? Did we find monies that were coming straight from Russia to Trump? No, we didn't really have any of that to Trump's family. Now we didn't really have any of going to Trump's family. Now let's do the Bidens. Or do we have any evidence that Trump publicly said, I interfered in this situation in Russia. I forced our tax dollars to force Russia to do this or that. No, we don't have any of that. Now let's do the Bidens. We have These are beyond dispute, the things I talked about. They're confirmed by both sides. Do these things prove 100% corruption? No. But they're a far better basis for actual things we know that warrant an investigation. Because based on all that bullshit that I just outlined with Trump-Russia collusion, they were like, yep, we need one of the largest investigations ever to spy on Trump, even when he's president. First time in the history of this country, to our knowledge, that they got a FISA warrant to spy on the president's team. But they're okay with it. Now, let's do Biden. Biden acknowledges he did a quid pro quo. He used $1 billion of your tax dollars to force the firing of this prosecutor, Victor Shokin. Victor Shokin, on paper, you could say, but it really wasn't. On paper, was the person that was in charge of the investigation into Burisma. There is dispute about whether or not that investigation was going anywhere. But on paper, he was the person that was allegedly in charge. Poroshenko, the president of Ukraine, said, we don't think he's corrupt. Poroshenko admits they fired him because they wanted the $1 billion, which Biden says, okay, now we can give you the $1 billion. All this is confirmed on tape. Hunter Biden worked for this corrupt energy company. This company was called corrupt by Biden, by the Democrats, by Obama. Hunter Biden worked for them. Hunter Biden was not qualified. Hunter Biden was getting almost $100,000 a month to work for them. So was John Kerry's son, Devin Archer. We know that the internal communications show that they were pressuring Hunter Biden and Devin Archer to lobby for them in the United States. We know that when they contacted the State Department, they mentioned Hunter Biden's name. None of that's in dispute. Does that on its own right prove corruption? No. We know that the laptop was real. We know that the laptop made allegations of getting money not just from Ukraine, but also China and other hostile foreign entities. We know that it says 10% was going to the big guy. We know that at least one, and I believe two, but I'll just say one, of the business partners in that arrangement said that the big guy that was getting 10% was Joe Biden. Now, could Bobulinski be lying? Could he be mistaken? Possibly. But we know that that's what he's publicly saying. There was nothing like that connected to Trump. All of that's known. Not in dispute anymore. It was originally, we were told it's a lie, and one by one we found out that it's true. And yet, despite the fact that, now I'll be generous here, does any of that prove on its own that Joe Biden's corrupt? No. But it's certainly far more smoke that warrants an investigation than the Trump-Russia collusion investigation. Which, by the way, almost all these Democrats were totally for. Thank you for the subscription, Average Debate Enjoyer. I really appreciate it. Again, my concern isn't Biden as much. Hunter Biden, it's almost none. Joe Biden, a little. My concern is why the disparate treatment from the FBI? How are you looking at these two situations and saying, well, we're not even going to attempt to verify this information, Trump-Russia collusion, and we're going to spy on a presidential campaign and then the president? 4 times we'll get a FISA warrant. An entire fucking year. But on the other hand, where we have far more smoke around this, that this could be true, we're just going to bury it. Thank you for the subscription. I really appreciate it, Dr. Rocky. Dr. Rocky Balboa. Wow. Thank you. Here's the other thing. I don't know if I typed this later in this disagreement I'm having with Pisco here. He's the one making the comparison to the Steele dossier and to this 1023. Here's the most damning difference. When they finally got around to interviewing the primary source for the Steele dossier, by the way, twice they used this dossier to spy on the presidential campaign, then President Trump, to get a FISA warrant, without even attempting to verify the primary, to contact the primary subsource. Again, imagine this. I say, hey, I saw a guy on the street, officer, and the guy on the street said that there's some drug enterprise and blah, 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 blah. His name's Jim Smith. I talked to Jim Smith on the street. And the local police are like, sounds good. And they never talked to Jim Smith. Jim Smith, Just walking down the street every day, the police are like, how you doing? And then after a 6-month investigation, they talk to Jim Smith, and Jim Smith goes, what? No, I was just bullshitting a Rob. It was just a funny story. Oh, shit. You didn't take that seriously, did you? Because that's what fucking happened. When they got around to interviewing Igor Dushenko, Igor was like, oh, that was just kind of rumors over dinner, and yeah, nothing confirmed. It was just random shit that I'd heard. I know my hair's getting long. I need to get it cut. Thank you, Dr. Rocky. I appreciate it. So the primary subsource said, this is all just rumors. I haven't confirmed anything. That right there should have been the end of the FISA warrants. Oh, shit. Instead, even the IG said this. He was shocked by this. They contacted the FBI contacted the FISA court and said, well, we talked to the primary subsource. FISA court's like, okay, and we believe him. We believe he's telling the truth. And the court's like, okay. And the FBI goes, that's it. They didn't say, oh, and what he's telling the truth about is, what he said was, yeah, this is basically just all rumor and he can't confirm any of it. And he can't believe we're doing it. Maybe I should, Nico. That's incredible. So the person that knows most, the primary subsource, is basically like, this is all just conjecture. I can't believe you're using this. That's what the source for the dossier said. Now, Pisco's comparing that to this 1023. The 1023 also centers around a source, a confidential human source, whose name we don't know yet. Has that source said to the FBI when he talked to them, oh, this was all bullshit, it was all rumors? No! That source said, I was in the room with Zlochevsky. He said that he gave $5 billion to Hunter, or $5 million to Hunter, and $5 million to Joe. He repeatedly went back to talk to the FBI to give more details of his story. So the source of the dossier, when finally talked to, basically says, it's all bullshit. The source of the 1023 is like, stand behind it. Absolutely. And cooperates with the FBI. And for some reason, the FBI's like, we're going to take the one that said, from the guy that said it was bullshit and keep spying on the president. But the one that said it's true, we're not going to do that. Average Debate Enjoyer says, Strzok withheld information about the Oppo research and unconfirmed rumors from investigators as stated in the Durham report. I need to get better at delivering my message. You're very concise and good at hammering home your points. Thank you, Average Debate Enjoyer. That's true. Strzok did do that. But remember, like, who was the, right, what was the guy that was charged by Durham? And then they lost the case. Whatever, we'll get to that point some other day. I don't want to get distracted too much. So that's where we're at with Pisco. Those are the differences. So one, even if Pisco's right that these two things are analogous, why is he concerned with my alleged double standard, which isn't one, but he's not concerned with the FBI's disparate treatment? Secondly, well, in ways, there are very slight ways that they're similar, but in every way that they're different, the 1023 is far more credible and warrants a serious investigation than the Steele dossier. Sussman, that's who I was thinking of, the debate enjoyer, yeah. Dushenko was the other one. Now let's see Pisco's response here. Here's some responses I get when I type it out. The left's not sending their best. Wow, you gish galloped. I say, yep, the crowd of cheers for corruption can't refute facts begins to trickle in with words like gish gallop. Really impressive. This guy says, it's crazy how many times I've heard these individual talking points clearly refuted to your face, and you still say them endlessly. The narrative's sacred, facts don't matter. It undermines you. And then he gives an example. He says, i.e., the FBI agent who talked to Facebook was not aware of the laptop. I said, so you give one example of me being refuted. Prove it. Show me that one agent wasn't aware and that others weren't in talks with Facebook. Because what he's making it seem like is, when I said that there was censorship, that the FBI was talking to social media, he takes one agent at one social media company and says that guy wasn't aware. So I say, prove that that guy wasn't aware. And secondly, prove that there weren't other people talking to social medias, which is what I said in my post. I said the House Judiciary just released today that the head of the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force that was working with social media testified that they knew the laptop was real. The Foreign Interference Task Force, the head of it, Demlo, she was asked, question, do you know who else at the Foreign Influence Task Force knew that the laptop was real? Answer, I don't actually. I would assume both might. Yes, I would certainly say that the section chief, Brian Benvediz, was aware. What about the individuals in the Russian unit? I would assume the unit chief was also aware. I'm pretty certain of that fact. For the individual, the counsel says, just to clarify, do you know for a certainty they were aware, or are you just making deductions? I'm pretty certain that they were aware. Oh boy! So the person that's the now head of the agency says they were aware. I'm pretty certain of it. No, I can't change Pisco's mind because it is indelible to his worldview that he not acknowledge any corruption exists in these agencies or any serious corruption. So there you go. This person makes a claim. Says, there was just one person that talked to Facebook from the FBI, and they didn't know about the laptop. Really, because the agency that was set up, the Foreign Influence Task Force, to talk to these social media campaigns or companies, their now leader, says, no, they were aware of it. The agents were aware of it. So what's the response? Quote, show me that one agent wasn't aware. That's their response to the sworn testimony. Jokes. Another person said, you paid for Twitter. Now, there's way more to this. Let's get to some of it. Oh, this one's good to point out too. Some random person. Man, why are you lying? The vice president acted on behalf of U.S. interests, and state policy isn't quid pro quo. You've been told this repeatedly. This guy said that. Him and another guy said this multiple times. Biden didn't do a quid pro quo. I said, you don't know what the definition is. Quid pro quo. Definition. Something given or received for something else. That is exactly what Biden did. The question is, was it legitimate or done for personal gain? But it certainly was a quid pro quo. And it certainly warranted an investigation. Seeing how his son was connected to the investigation. Literally, they're like, it can't be a quid pro quo. It's not a quid pro quo because it was legitimate. And they'll die on this hill. No, everyone wanted him. Everyone said this was good foreign policy. Remember the original impeachment of Trump? And they're bringing all these State Department people up. Unelected State Department bureaucrats. Right? Like, oh, shit. Not Vindman. What was her name? There was a woman whose name started with a V. And then there was... I can't remember their names right now. But they kept saying, Trump was going against our foreign policy. No. Your foreign policy doesn't exist. You are an unelected bureaucrat, and Trump is the elected leader of this country, and your boss. It's our foreign policy, not unelected little shits that disagree with the president that we elected. But you can see how arrogant they were. And that's the response to these. Well, this was our foreign policy to do this quid pro quo to get rid of Shokin. That was our policy. So therefore it's okay. Oh, okay, so if other people wanted Shokin fired, then it was okay to do this? Absolutely. Okay, well, other people, Democrats, wanted Comey fired, and Trump fired him, so then no need for a special counsel, right? You were against the Mueller investigation? That's different. That was different. Trump did that for personal reasons. Same thing. You talk to Pisco. Pisco always says this. Intent. You can't prove Hillary Clinton's intent. You can't prove Paul Combetta's intent. You don't know what's going on in their mind. You don't know. So you can't charge them. Mens rea is necessary to charge for these crimes. Intent. It's like, okay, well, you thought that Trump should be impeached for his quid pro quo, right? Because he allegedly said, we're not going to give you this shit, Zelensky, unless you cooperate with an investigation into the Bidens. He's like, yeah, that's impeachable. That's probably a crime. Yep. And I'm like, okay, then why isn't it impeachable and possibly a crime when Biden did it? Well, that's different. We don't know what was in Biden's head. Oh, but you know what was in Trump's head? Yeah, the only reason he would say that is for his own personal gain. That's it. That's the only reason. You can't come up with another reason. Sure I can. Oh, really? What's that? He legitimately thought that the FBI covered up the fact that Joe Biden issued a quid pro quo to get his son off the hook? And he doesn't want to send $1 billion to a country that is so corrupt that it's working with his opposition to the tune of $1 billion tax dollars? Seems like pretty legitimate concern for the President of the United States. No, we know Trump's intent. Right, they always know. Trump's evil, Orange Man bad, standard's different for him. They always know. Isn't that odd? Now, you can't know intent, though, but they know. They know the intent. All right. Here's Pisco answering me when I went through my list here. 1. Hunter Biden taking money from Burisma as a board member is not Joe Biden taking a bribe. 2nd, Hunter Biden has been charged for crimes partially corroborated by information obtained by the laptop, has nothing to do with the allegations of Joe Biden corruption or bribery. Censorship, likewise irrelevant. Nice try. FBI didn't undermine public reporting about the laptop, the hard drive, obtained by the media. It was the ex-members of the intelligence committee who stated that. 3. Not corroborated that Biden was in the room when certain money was alleged bargained from Burisma. Those allegations, which are self-serving statements from a crack addict, are non-authenticated, related to the alleged Chinese deal, not this. You appear to be confusing stories, not surprising. 4. Quid pro quo issued according to U.S. and allied policy objectives. Hunter Biden was not under investigation by fired prosecutor. Investigation pertained to conduct that predated his time at Burisma. Furthermore, significant evidence this particular investigation did not proceed under fired prosecutor. 5. Corrupt prosecutor was justly fired. Yes. 6. The point of comparison with the Steele dossier and why you're hypocritical, so nice job repeating yourself. I'll answer each of these one by one, as you'll see. 1. Hunter clearly was being paid to potentially lobby his father, which emails show was being claimed. The evidence is stronger on just this point than the entire Trump-Russia collusion investigation. And yet the FBI's not got FISA warrants, raided people, etc. In fact, whistleblowers are claiming they covered up for the Bidens. This is what Pisco can't get around. It's the central point. I don't have to prove that Biden is corrupt. That's not my claim. My claim is that the FBI has engaged in a double standard in how they went after allegations against Trump versus how they go after allegations against other people like the Bidens. That's it. I've already gone through with you all how the evidence here is far more substantiated. 2nd, the fact that former heads of the intelligence community lying, saying it was Russian disinformation, is bad enough. Yet we know from whistleblowers and the Twitter files that the active FBI and other government orgs were priming social media to think that there was going to be a hack of Hunter Biden material released by Russia. Material released by Grassley today shows testimony that claims the FBI knew this wasn't a Russian hack all along. And this is something that they'll do. Because the media ignores this so much, it allows them, people like this, like Pisco, to conflate things such as this. He's like, well, 51 former heads of the CIA and FBI, they could say it was Russian disinformation. That's not a crime. Well, technically true. It does speak to how biased these agencies are and the community surrounding them. But let's say I accept that. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the active FBI and other government organizations that were in constant communication that we saw through the Twitter files with social media companies, such as the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, that was telling them, yeah, you got to be careful about Russian disinformation. That's what I'm talking about. Notice Pisco doesn't mention that. He just conflates and says the former agents. 3rd, the fact the in-the-room comments haven't been verified is irrelevant as to whether or not this is evidence warning an investigation than the Trump-Russia hoax, which it clearly is. The fact that it's about even more foreign corruption, this time with China, is even worse. And if true, it does prove that Joe's defense on Burisma that he was completely unaware of his son's business dealings is a lie. Fourth, show me proof that Hunter wasn't being investigated by Shokin. They keep saying this. Actually, Shokin wasn't investigating Hunter. Show me the proof. Shokin says he was. Shokin also had just froze Burisma's founder's assets right before the Biden quid pro quo. So even if you argue he was for some reason not looking at Hunter, he still was jeopardizing the Biden cash flow with this investigation. Because even if Hunter wouldn't have been charged with a crime, if Burisma would have been shut down, that's $100,000 a month that's no longer going to Hunter Biden. Why is it that they act like, well, if it wasn't imagine that, if it was anyone else, if it was anyone connected to Trump and it was like, well, this investigation is going to cost them $100,000 a month. And so when they issued this quid pro quo, it was to protect that money. He would understand. He'd be like, yep, I could see that. But when it comes to the Bidens, it's like, well, unless Hunter was specifically targeted for criminal investigation, why would they be concerned if Burisma went out of business? Well, because they lose $100,000 a month. And maybe they're worried that Burisma will say, well, wait a minute. Hunter Biden was lobbying for this, and that's against the law. Let's cut a deal. And they have no proof that Hunter wasn't being targeted. To the contrary, Shokin says he was. The fact that others, I said, he froze the assets. He was still jeopardizing the Biden cash flow. The fact that others wanted Shokin fired doesn't mean it was okay for Biden to issue this quid pro quo. Republicans and Democrats wanted Comey fired, yet you and Democrats still wanted a special counsel when Trump did it. Next, Poroshenko, the Ukrainian president, is on a phone call with Biden admitting they saw no evidence of Shokin's corruption, but fired him anyways because of Joe Biden's quid pro quo. Once more, Pisco just asserts, as has been done the entire time, Shokin was corrupt. Show me the evidence. Well, Europe said he was corrupt. Okay. Well, Ukraine, having their own government, said, we don't think he's corrupt. Poroshenko was literally basically a vassal of the Obama administration. He didn't think Shokin was corrupt. But you just assert it. Well, Biden did, and Europe did, so there, he's corrupt. That's it. So it was a good thing that we issued that quid pro quo. No proof necessary, just the claim. Lastly, the Steele dossier was sourced by a suspected Russian spy, paid for by the Hillary team, and the FBI knew she was going to try to smear Trump as colluding with Russia. They were never able to verify any of these crimes it alleged, yet they still used it as a central basis for getting a FISA warrant 4 times to spy on Trump's campaign than his presidency. The fact you are okay with this, but don't want any sort of equal treatment for Biden shows you are a hypocrite and fine with the corrupt double standard. And I could go on and on. But this is where, Pisco is a lawyer. So this is what the debate will be about this weekend. Right? And also it'll be is, well, this CNN article says that people in the UK said that Shokin was corrupt. And mens rea and prosecutorial discretion. We don't know what Biden's intent was. But what's the takeaway from this? Pisco, without even knowing it, by claiming that I was engaged in a double standard because the Steele dossier is just like this 1023. All of that we just talked about here, all of that, actually, this is much more serious than the Steele dossier because there's way more things confirmed surrounding it in all the ways that I talked about. I don't even need to get into that part of the argument. I could completely concede and say, okay, Pisco, for the sake of argument, let's say you're right. These two situations are analogous. The 1023 on the confidential human source saying that Joe Biden, got paid $5 million personally to force the firing of this prosecutor by a corrupt pro-Russian oligarch in Ukraine. A person who stood by that test statement to the FBI is the same as the Steele dossier, which the source for it said this is kind of all joke, but was still used to spy. Fine. If those things are analogous, and I'm somehow engaged in a double standard by being against the spying of Trump because of that, fine, cool. Anyways, how about the FBI? Why not the same treatment? I should become a lawyer. It's a fucking joke. Everyone knows. Everyone knows. And that's one of the reasons, I'll say this and then I gotta wrap up, right? When I did this panel, and we talked about this stuff a lot, it was on Connor's channel. Connor was the moderator, but then afterwards, they stuck around, and I talked to Dylan Burns and Beckett and Destiny. and Connor was there. Connor doesn't agree with me with everything, right? Connor doesn't like Trump. Not that I don't have things to criticize Trump about, but Connor kind of, I think, thinks that Trump's really corrupt and has it coming to him, right? He thinks that maybe I'm too out there with some of the shit that I think. Okay. But even he, when it comes to this point, right, where they're in this hole, Destiny and Dylan and Beckett and all, they're in this fucking hole, where they're trying to defend that maybe when Burisma's lawyers reach out after their assets are froze, and then they reach out like a week later or 2 weeks later, they reach out to the State Department and they're like, hey, Hunter Biden works here. Can we come talk to you? And then like a week or two after they get that meeting, all of a sudden Joe Biden's really pushing Poroshenko. You need to fire Shokin or you're not going to get this money. Then finally in March they fire him and he says, okay, now you can have the money. Even Connor's like, dude, this is fucking laughable. Average debate enjoyer says, the whole about why Shokin was corrupt, if you like, he was being investigated for ties to people who got caught extorting money. I don't think it was proven yet, but it was pretty credible to investigate him. A whistleblower named Sakharov presented evidence in Ukraine. Yeah, that could be true. There have been allegations. That it's absolutely true that there were allegations. There was some, like, I remember hearing about like some cab scheme, like extorting people from cab, but no one provides those details. Nothing was ever proven. And like, imagine this. Imagine that so the Ukraine's one of the most corrupt countries and had been, not my words, according to the Obama administration, etc., right? For a decade, for a long, long time. Everybody knew how corrupt Ukraine was, right? In fact, Zelensky, who was basically a stand-up comedian, was basically a single-issue person running, was like corruption in Ukraine, right? And that's how he got elected, right? I feel bad for the people of Ukraine because I feel like it's probably true that, what the fuck? What's the name of the president before Poroshenko? Shit. All these names just jumble in my head. Before Poroshenko, it was, not Zolchevsky, it was Lyshenko? Am I right about that? I think it was Lyshenko. I could be wrong. Anyways, the president was allegedly like a pro-Russian president. Probably true. And so then they get rid of him and they get Poroshenko, who's basically a vassal for the United States. The poor people of Ukraine, can't they just get a fucking leader that cares about them? I sympathize, because I can't either in the United States. So why is it that all of a sudden, this one time, all the corrupt people in all the countries around the world, can we name one time ever that any presidential administration's been like, we're not going to send you this huge sum of money unless you fire this guy? Has that ever happened? Particularly like a prosecutor? Like, did we really, all the money we're sending to Afghanistan, there wasn't any corrupt prosecutors there? Or Saudi? Yanukovych, shit, what did I say? Yeah, that's who the president. I'm sorry, you're right. Yanukovych was the pro-Russian president, allegedly. And think about this claim for a minute, right? So the argument is, in part, Shokin is corrupt, he's taking money, extortion, blah, 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 but in part, he's also not going after these corrupt oligarchs, such as Zolchevsky. Okay, fair enough, right? So then when the investigation, so you're like, well, the Obama administration, they don't want to send money to a place where prosecutors are letting corrupt Russian oligarchs off the hook. Basically what Zolchevsky, again, this is the boss of Hunter Biden, what he was accused of doing was getting all these natural gas leases that was technically the wealth of the people of Ukraine and basically extorting it for himself, doing financial tricks and things like that to get incredibly wealthy himself and basically cheat the people of Ukraine out of the proceeds from these natural resources. Right? That's what was being alleged, and kickbacks to Russia and things of that nature. That's in part what was being alleged by Zolchevsky. Okay, you could make an argument that's like, well, do we want to send money to a country like that? If we're giving money to a country to help build up, let's say Sudan, tomorrow Biden says, we're going to send $1 billion to Sudan to help them build up, right? And then someone's like, but wait, Mr. President, the head prosecutor in Sudan is this horrible, corrupt shithead, right? And He's not going to go after any of the corrupt people. And what's going to happen is that money that we're sending Sudan eventually is going to find its hands into these corrupt people, and the prosecutor's just going to let it happen. And so then Biden would be like, okay, then let's get rid of that corrupt prosecutor before we send the money. Fair enough. Let's say that's the argument. Okay. So they got rid of the corrupt prosecutor. The $1 billion gets sent. And Zlochevsky gets left off the hook. So at that point, surely then, the Obama-Biden administration's like, hey, we're furious. We just sent that $1 billion because we got rid of this prosecutor in hopes that they'll go after these corrupt oligarchs. And yet they're not. And not only that, the NABU, the agency that got the investigation into Zlochevsky and Burisma, they're our allies that we fund. Isn't that weird? They never brought it up again. All of a sudden it was just, oh well, what can we do? We got rid of that one corrupt prosecutor and now there's a bunch more. Whoopsie daisy. Right? The truth is it's tedious. It's tedious to go. Everyone that remotely is honest could see the clear double standard. It's clear as day. This isn't even getting into the discussions of the whistleblowers that we saw from the IRS yesterday. We're not even getting into that. We're not really talking about that with this situation. The evidence is overwhelming. The disparate treatment between how people connected to Trump are investigated versus how people connected to the establishment Democratic Party, like Biden's, Clinton's, how people that commit crimes like allegedly lie to investigators, such as James Comey or Anthony McCabe, that mishandle documents that they were not supposed to have, like Comey, always left off the hook. Every time. Every time. Trump's got classified documents his house, raid Mar-a-Lago. Biden's got classified documents in his house. Well, don't do that. And it's every institution. It's not just the IRS. It's not just the FBI. It's our media. It's our social media. Elon's pushing back a little, whether it be for personal reasons or not. It's academia. It's the entertainment industry. I'm on YouTube. This will probably get me a strike, though they've claimed they've changed their policy. My claim from the get-go has been that the election in 2020 was stolen from Donald Trump. Not because of Dominion voting machines. Not because of ballots. Could be. There could be truth to some of that. But I'm going to be honest with you. I have not seen definitive, clear-cut proof of that. I've not. And I don't begrudge even people I think are bad faith on the left that are Democrats saying, show me the smoking gun. I don't begrudge that. I think that is a reasonable position. I think there are legitimate questions, such as chain of custody of ballots. There are serious questions in places like Maricopa, particularly in 2022, but I digress. But I haven't seen smoking gun proof. I think that the reaction of censoring people that have questions is abhorrent and shows they're censoring you not because they're afraid you're lying. They're censoring you because they're afraid you're telling the truth. But if I'm honest, I haven't seen smoking gun proof. But the election was stolen. I told you this immediately after the election. I was the only person in the country I heard saying this. I said, I don't begrudge anyone talking about any conspiracy theory. I get called a conspiracy theorist. The official narrative is that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself in an almost impossible way while 2 guards fell asleep, while 2 cameras malfunctioned at the same time. That's the official story. That is a conspiracy so outlandish that I'm not going to mock anyone for any conspiracy theory they have. It's not my forte to talk about things like the voting machines and things like that, but I don't begrudge anyone doing so. I tried to call balls and strikes. I tried to call out when I saw things that were clearly bullshit. And I did. You go back and watch. There were people sending me stuff like, Rob, did you see in this district in Wisconsin, more people voted than live there? And then I tried to go to their website and do the math, and I was like, those numbers aren't accurate, at least not what they're reporting. According to the numbers they're reporting, that's not true. I tried my best. But I immediately said, while people are focused on that and they have the right to do, I have a question. What if that didn't happen? What if ballots weren't changed? What if voting machines didn't do anything nefarious? What if it was basically on the up and up? That's worse. Because that means that our institutions could make anyone president anytime they want. They literally could win any election they want. Because they drug an old man with dementia that wasn't campaigning across the finish line. And how did they do it? Because the tools of propaganda that they have are becoming so powerful and so sophisticated, and the lawfare that they use, and the agencies, the spying through places like the FBI and their control of the media and social media and algorithms and things like that are so powerful that if Google and the FBI wants to pick the presidential winner from now until the end of time, they will be able to do so. And that's far more frightening. I said that shit the day after the election. That's what I said. And everyone, I was bringing people on my show. I remember I had a woman who won Emmys at a local news station, came on my show. Before the show, I was talking, this is when I used to do the radio show. I was talking to my two co-hosts, and they were like, did you hear this story about Dominion servers in Germany? And the Navy SEALs are currently engaged in a firefight. And they're like, literally, there's a fucking battle between mercenaries that work for Dominion voting and Navy SEALs. And they're fighting it out over these servers. And I was like, yeah, don't talk about that shit on our show today. And they're like, why? I was like, because that's clearly bullshit. And it's going to diminish our credibility by lending credence to it. That's fucking bullshit. On the 0.00001% chance that's accurate, I think people will forgive us for not talking about it when it sounds like a fantastical bullshit story. That's what it sounds like to me. Not saying that Dominion couldn't have done shady shit, blah, blah, but the idea that there's currently this battle, it's bullshit. And so I convinced my two co-hosts. I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to fucking, if we talk about it, I'm just going to be like, I have nothing to say about this. I think it's bullshit. That's what I'm going to say. So we get this big guest. I'm not going to mention her name. Fuck it. I'll mention her name. Her name is Wendy Bell. Big guest for us. Won like 17 daytime Emmys. Had some shit go on here in Pittsburgh where she got let go from the news station. It was like this firebrand, like conservative, right? What's the first fucking thing she brings up? When she goes, oh, did you hear about Dominion service in Germany? I'm just like, oh my fucking God. But that's fine. Do I think Wendy Bell's a bad person for talking about that? No. But while we're all focused on this shiny thing over here, like, here's this huge monolith staring us right in the fucking face. There it is. And every day we find out more and more. They said, there's no censorship. There's no censorship happening. Then there was clearly censorship. And they said, but the government didn't direct it. They weren't even in communication. And then it turned out they were. And they said, yeah, but the laptop story wasn't real. It wasn't real. It was all bullshit. It was fake. And then it turned out it was real. Yeah, but the FBI and stuff, they didn't know about it. And then it turned out they did. Yeah, but the particular agency's task force that was talking to social media, they didn't know. And now we find out that they did. Yeah, but it was all investigated. And now we find whistleblowers saying, no, we were told we weren't allowed to look at this shit. Over and over and over. I talked about Professor Robert Epstein that said that up to as many as 16 million votes could be swayed by Google's algorithms alone. We're talking about an election that was decided by 40,000 votes in 3 or 4 states. Time magazine puts an article out. A shadowy cabal fortified the election for Joe Biden. People from the Chamber of Commerce and social media and corporate America came together to make sure that stories that were disinformation about Joe Biden didn't make it out there, and ones that were critical of Trump were amplified, and to change the way voting was done, to make sure that, Biden would win. Laying it out there for you. Couldn't talk about that. I can't tell you how many fucking community strikes I got on YouTube for talking about that. Constantly. Channel being shadow banned. Fucking straight up strikes being given. Demonetized. And all the platforms I'm on. Can't talk about it. Can't talk about it. Just like COVID. Can't talk about that shit. Everyone agrees. All the experts agree. No shit. They censor everyone who disagrees. Oh, what's that? All the experts were wrong about COVID's origins? Well. They interfered in the 2016 election and the 2018 election. 2016, they interfered with the Russia collusion bullshit. That's what they were doing. They were spying on Trump. Remember, the standard for political scandals is Watergate. What was Watergate again? A couple of fools bumbling through a hotel trying to get dirt on their opponent. Hillary Clinton had the fucking FBI, the most powerful investigative agency in the history of the world, as her personal, and the Obama administration, as their personal spy agency going after Trump's campaign. Leaking shit to the press. Instead of two bumbling fools, the most powerful investigative agency in the history of the world, legally spying on one of the candidates. Well, I would say illegal, but they were allowed to do it. (2018), those midterm elections. How different would it have been if the truth about what the FBI was doing and about how Trump was being smeared was never done? How different would it have been? The entire Trump administration, and I'm not making excuses for the man. I criticize him all the time. At the end of the day, it's still on him that he surrounded himself with people like Bill Barr that were there to entrench the corruption. That's on him. He put John Bolton there. That's him. But his administration was stymied before he even took office by all of these institutions working in tandem to make sure that he wasn't able to get his agenda put through because he would constantly be battling the corruption against him. Constant drumbeat in our media, in our social media, in academic circles, in entertainment circles. Trump's possibly a Russian spy. Trump did this, Trump did that. And then when the allegations were bullshit, then the story became, but Trump both protested too much. He obstructed. Trump was pissed that he was being accused of being a Russian spy and shit was being leaked against him and his team to the press all the time when he knew it was bullshit. So then he protested. Now that means he's corrupt. 4 fucking years of that. 4 years. Probably affected the 2018 election, which meant that Republicans lost their majority, which meant that Trump was even less likely to get his agenda accomplished. 2020 was interfered with. Not just with the treatment of the Russia collusion and all that shit and the impeachments and all that and all these agencies from the DOJ, the IRS, the fucking State Department. We saw in the impeachment how all the State Department, George Kent and all these people, right, were coming out, oh, Trump is against our foreign policy and blah, 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 blah. Then they censored right before the election. And I've told this story. I don't know. I think I'm a reasonable judge of people. This is how I think it. I think Trump thought up until the month before the election that he was going to win. Because I think this is what happened. I think he thought the corruption against me is so expansive. Once the American people get it confirmed, they're going to be like, this is incredible, right? And I think that he was probably talking to Bill Barr and people on Barr's team and was like, okay, we know how corrupt this whole shit was, right? We know, like, for example, I was impeached about this Ukraine shit, but we know this laptop, we know all this information, how corrupt. Once this shit comes out, that's it. And they were like, yeah, we'll get to the bottom of it before the election. Absolutely. I think the whole time that's what they, don't declassify shit, Mr. President. We'll get to the bottom. Leave justice run its course, and eventually it'll come out. And I think when the Hunter Biden laptop story broke, right before the election, Trump was like, here we go. Got him. All the shit they accused me of, being corrupt for a hostile foreign country, was actually Biden. We have more proof of that. Here we go. And then something incredible happened. Nothing. The media was like, yeah, we're not going to cover that. Social media was like, we'll shadow ban it. We'll censor people from saying it. We'll even censor America's oldest newspaper, the New York Post. And I think at that moment, he knew. I think at that moment, he was like, I mean, he probably still had hope he'd win, but I think he was like, oh shit. I underestimated. You can't do that. You can't wait for an October surprise like you used to. They'll just cover the shit up. They don't give a fuck. Now it's too late. What are you going to do? Replace Barr a week before the election? Whoops. There you go. 40,000 votes. Now, believe polling for what you will, but I've seen polls that said as many as 30% of Democratic voters said that had they been aware that the Hunter Biden laptop story was accurate, that it would have changed the way they voted. 40,000 votes. That's it. That's all it took. Thanks, Nico. I appreciate it. And the left's fine with it. People like Pisco, people like Destiny, people like Anderson Cooper, people like Jake Depp, they're all fine with it. They're fine with it. It helped their side, so they're okay with it. They're okay with it. Just look at, like when the Twitter files came out, remember there was that one, like in one of the early Twitter files, there was that one tweet that was like, they said that Trump's team had also requested that stories be taken down. And they were like, oh my goodness. The left went nuts. Oh, see, Trump, oh my God. Oh, Jesus. And then Matt Taibbi was like, we were unable to find any examples, though. We couldn't find an example. If Trump's team steals a dime and Biden's team steals $100 billion, they're like, both teams stole. Both teams stole. And the fact the FBI chose to charge Trump for stealing the dime, but not Biden for the $100 billion, well, it's prosecutorial discretion. They're okay with it. They don't give a shit. It's laughable. Oh, rolling with the dad jokes. Yeah, the corruption's in their face. And by the way, the institutions, and I said this over and over, would we have been further ahead had Trump never won? Because I think we had the frog in the boiling pot theory, right? Where we had all these corrupt institutions, but it was a slow burn, slowly increasing it. And then Trump went, and it was like, fuck it, jack it up to boiling. And it worked. And so now it's right in your face. Cocaine at the White House. We have no clue. Huh? No. Really? This should be like the most secure building in the country. There should be cameras everywhere, right? We don't know. No clue. Well, investigation done. We just don't know. We don't know. Don't know. What can you do? And we just have to, and then we'll be like, well, that's clearly bullshit. And the left will be like, nah. And that's it. The story's done. I mean, take the left's worldview for a second. Take the Democrats' worldview. Russians tried to steal the 2016 election. They were cultivating Donald Trump. They're worse than Hitler. They're these genocidal monsters. They're attacking Ukraine. They're afraid the Biden administration, unlike Trump that was basically in league with Russia, the Biden administration, they're a bulwark standing against Russia. And they're helping us crush Russia. Well, if that's the case, if that's your worldview, well, geez, Russia might have some sort of incentive to take out people in the United States. Could be true. Be terrible. It'd be horrific. Let me be clear. I don't like Biden. I don't like his administration. I don't wish any harm, physical harm on people like that. I think they should be held to account legally, but not physical harm like that. So it's not beyond reason that an enemy that's so ruthless like that could try to have some sort of attack on our White House. Fuck, we were told that there was an insurrection at the White House. Evil fucking maniac Trump supporters almost. That one guy with the Viking hat, that dude almost took over the country. If you get the speaker's gavel, that's it. You're now ruler of the country, right? That's it. That's how close we were. The insurrection, remember? And yet, all you had to do was get your hands on some sort of device that could cause a mass sort of harm. You could walk it right into the fucking White House. No one will know. No one will know. Secret Service, FBI, people running the cameras, they're all like, shucks. We don't know. That's the story they're telling us. That's what they're telling us. Thanks, Just Ball, and I appreciate it. That's their fucking story. It doesn't pass this. Everybody knows it's bullshit. They know it. We know it. You know, it's that Solzhenitsyn quote. They know they're lying. We know they're lying. They know we know they're lying, yet still they lie. Oh, thank you, Roland. You linked those forms. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks. I'm going to get it trimmed up here in a day or two, but thank you. Yeah, Nico, I said that from the get-go. I wish Biden would have proved me wrong. He didn't. And again, Biden, I ultimately feel, is just an old man with dementia. I think he's probably a shitty person. But I wasn't cheering for him to do poorly. My concern is the institutions. But you just have to, again, you'll get into these nuanced arguments. And it's amazing. It's amazing to what they'll fall to. What is the I was on with Adam and Sitch. I'd love to talk to Adam and Sitch again. Remember that whole fucking thing? You walk through the Burisma thing, they're like, we don't believe it. We don't believe it. Well, we just have to wait and see. We just have to wait and see. Wait and see. That's all everyone says. Wait and see. How many elections? Maybe 40. Like the JFK assassination thing, right? Fuck it. Maybe in another 100 years we'll get to the bottom of it. Can't have an opinion till then. Can't point out the double standard till then, right? Oh, you can't say anything about it. Have to wait and see. Only they don't wait and see when it's shit that they want to comment on. Oh, Trump did that shit. They'll jump right in when it suits them. Unless the FBI tells me it's accurate, how could I ever question the FBI? There's a possible explanation for all of this stuff. It's possible. Prosecutorial discretion. Then you get to talking to people like Pisco, and like, well, actually the law says this, mens rea, and blah, blah, blah. It's very lawyery, and you're like, oh, okay. Guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He's got some terms down and shit. Great, sounds great. And you start to get into it, and it's like, they just deleted subpoenaed emails, Well, he forgot about that 6 months ago. He was told to delete that shit, and he also then, by the way, think about this. You're Paul Combetta. It's the most important thing that'll ever happen to your career in your life. You're some fucking tech guy that's running tech. Keeping up servers for Hillary Clinton. Right? All of a sudden you get a subpoena. Now your job really fucking matters. Like the one thing. It's like if you're a firefighter and for 10 years you work and there's no fire and then finally there's a fire. You think you'd remember that day? I do. But not Paul Combetta. He gets the subpoena and he's like, oh yeah, I forgot. 6 months ago, I said I would delete this shit. And it's like, you just talked to Cheryl Mills, Hillary's top lawyer. You just talked to her like several days before you decided to delete this shit. What was that conversation? I don't remember. He can't remember that conversation with Cheryl Mills, but he remembers the one he had with her 6 months ago. That he remembered. And they believe this shit. Yeah, sounds reasonable. What could the FBI do? What could they do? Pisco even said, and we'll get to this, right? This is something that Pisco will try to say. He'll be like, well, actually, I would be okay with the special counsel. I would be okay with the special counsel looking into, slight parts of this. I think I'd be okay. Me too. I'd be for a special counsel. I hope you're still listening, Pisco. I hope I've drug out your night as research. I hope you're reading it. Who do y'all think would be a good special counselor to look into the Biden stuff and the FBI? I'm going to throw a name out there. You ready for this? You tell me if you're Pisco or someone on the left, if you think this is a fair name. Here's who should be the special counsel to look into the Biden investigation, this Burisma shit, the China shit, FBI handling of it. You ready? Here's the name I got. Bob Mueller. How's that? How about Bob Mueller? No, I'm debating Pisco's oh shit, it might be Sunday. I think it's Sunday night at 9 p.m. Yeah, Burke and BPF are both good guys. How about Bob Mueller? Destiny got something to say about that? Pisco? Jake Tapper? Hasan? Sam Cedar? Line them up. Bob Mueller. Sounds fair, right? And then I'm not surprised, Tainted. I bet his takes are really bad. One of my best friends is really for the student loan forgiveness. By the way, I have something to say about that. Give me a second here at the end. Can anyone protest Bob Mueller? Are we going to hear that he's secretly a Trump plant or anything like that? Bob Mueller seems fair to me. Right? And then we staff his team with a bunch of Trump supporters, lawyers, like Rudy Giuliani. Right? Bob Mueller's fair and impartial. So we'll just staff it with Giuliani and Sydney or Susan, what's her name? Sidney Powell. Put her up there. Bunch of Trump people that have worked for Trump's organizations. Sounds fair, right? Say 17 of them. Right? My friend does have students. So do I, though, but I'm against it. That'd be fair, right? And if they say, wait a minute, you can't do that. Oh, no, Bob Mueller's he's sharp as a tack. And he's neutral. Right? So who cares if all the people working under him are clearly biased? Who cares? Right? That's what we were told with the special counsel. And it turned out when Bob Mueller actually spoke in front of Congress, he's basically a fucking invalid. He doesn't know anything. He's an old man like Biden that doesn't know where he's at. And he wasn't doing shit with his investigation. So why not do it again? Let's put a figurehead like Bob Mueller up there and then have Rudy Giuliani be his right-hand man. And he'll be the special counsel looking into the FBI and the Bidens. Sounds fair, right? That's horseshit. That's bullshit. That's bias. But you had no problem when it was Peter Strzok and fucking James Comey and Andy McCabe and Rod Rosenstein and all the fucking losers that were in the FBI and the partisan hacks that were on Mueller's team. They're cool with that because Bob Mueller's impartial. Oh, and watch the fucking worm scramble then. I'm for a special counsel as long as it's someone that Biden appoints that'll, basically be a sycophant for them. I'd be for that. How about someone that worked for the opposition like all the people in Mueller's team when they were going after Trump? How about that? That seems fair. Let's get those FISA warrants rolling, right, Pisco? All right, I do have to wrap up. Let me say this about the student loan thing. Anybody see this story? How much was it? 25, correct me if I'm wrong. Biden's team put out $25 billion of student loans being forgiven. Is that number accurate? Can someone correct me if I'm wrong about that? I don't remember this specific number. If you missed this story, Biden's team came out. So there was the Supreme Court case, and then Biden's team came out the other day here and issued some sort of student loan forgiveness. $39 billion for 804,000 borrowers. Well, here's the rub. Now, why are we told, right? Think about this for a second. Why are we told that we need this student loan forgiveness? This is the story that's being told. That basically these poor students, they're impoverished. They can never get out of debt. They go to college. They can't get out of debt. They're saddled with this student loan debt. And so they need to get it back. It's affecting poor people. Now, the counter argument to this is most people that graduate college or go to college financially do far better off than people that don't, or at least considerably better off. So why should we make people that did the right thing, that didn't go to college and didn't borrow, have to pay in the form of debt cancellation, which will either be increased taxation or increased inflation? Why should they have to pay for other people? What about the people that work their way through college? Do they get a refund check for doing the right thing? But the argument is that the poorer people will be disproportionately not affected. But the counter to that is, well, no, students are poor and blah, blah, blah. But if you read the details of the plan, it struck out to me, something stuck out to me. The plan cancels debt for people that have made a certain amount of payments on time, genuinely equating to 20 or 25 years. Now, I'll repeat that. If you've made your student loan payments every month for 20 years, we'll say, then they'll forgive the rest of it. You think that's the poorest people? You think? Because I know an awful lot of people that have considerable student loan debt that are poor. You think they're making their payments 20 years? You think? I would say no. I would say the people that are the poorest that went to school are probably not repaying their student loans, or have probably had significant lapses. Secondly, did you know this? If you work for a nonprofit or certain other organizations that are considered to be of benefit to society, and you make your payments for 10 years on your student loans, guess what? The federal program is already erasing those student loans. That was already set up. I'm telling you, like, it's so bad. It, like, you have to, sometimes like, do you ever play a video game, right? And, like, there's NPCs in the game. Like, let's say you're playing, like, Halo or something. And you got the, like, I haven't played Halo in 15 years. What's Master Chief and was, like, the Human Alliance or whatever, right? And there'll be a scene where, like, you go in, you're the main guy, but you'll see the soldiers that are on your side, and they're fighting the aliens, right? And you watch the computers, like, fight it out. And you might say to yourself, like, well, geez, it looks like if the human soldiers that are on my side would do this, they would win. Why don't they do that? And then you're like, oh, right, it's a video game. That's not what they're programmed to do. They're not really trying to win. It's a fucking game. Right. Sometimes I forget when I'm like, why don't fucking Republicans do this? Right, because the Republican leadership, it's just a game. They're not actually concerned with pointing out the absurdity and, moving the country in a good direction. The Republicans aren't at the top level. They're not. So that explains it. But, I think Vivek's doing a pretty good job. I've seen some things that are slightly concerning about him. But in general, I think he's doing good. It's the closest to the shit that I would be saying. I would go so much further. I should have ran for president. I'd be great. I would be like, find a group that's traditionally Republican or independent, right? So I would be like, how about this? Everyone that never took out student loans, I will send a check for $100,000. How about that? Everybody of the following jobs: farmer, welder, carpenter, like blue-collar jobs like that, we're going to send $100,000. How about that? Wait, that's a bad plan. How about $1 million? We'll send them $1 million. How about that? $1 million. Blue-collar workers. How about that? We're going to send, why even stop there? Inner city, people in the inner city here in Pennsylvania, I'm running for governor. We're going to send you out, vote for Rob, vote for Republican Rob. I'm going to send you a check for $5 million. Every single Pennsylvanian, $5 million. Vote for me. Wouldn't you like $5 million? Want to be nice? What's the left's argument? Says they, you don't care about these poor people? They're struggling? You don't care about them? That's disgusting. You don't care about poor people. That's what I'll say. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That's terrible. These people are suffering. I just want to send them $5 million to live. That's all I want to do. What are they going to say? You can't do that. It's not fair. That's buying votes. That'll cause inflation. No. Outrageous. How dare you? You're just keeping poor people down. That's all you're doing. And unlike the Democrats, I'd cut the fucking check. I would. There you go. Fuck it. Why not? That's our system now. That's all you gotta do. Yeah, we'll send you checks, man. $2,000. We'll forgive your student loans. What the fuck ever? Vote for us. Ah, geez, the court says we can't do that. Oh, well, we'll try again. Vote for us in 4 years. It's fucking absurd. It's a joke. But Republicans don't give a shit to push back. Inflation's transitory. Why do we pay taxes? I don't get it. How much taxes do we collect a year? $3 trillion? Fuck it, print it. Easy peasy, no more taxes. Inflation's transitory. Right? Why take our taxes? Just turn on the fucking printing press. Right? Oh, wait, why won't you do that? Oh, because you're full of shit. Just like today, right? Today we saw Eric Adams in New York saying, well, our cup overfloweth with illegal immigrants, and it's time we can't take any more. But I heard they're great. Everyone told me. That's what all the Democrats told me. Read the poem on the Statue of Liberty. We don't turn away the tired and hungry and poor. Illegal immigrants are better Americans than Americans. They increase the quality of life, and they increase the GDP, and they increase the economy, and they make our culture so much better. Why can't New York handle them? That seems incredible. All the border towns we were told were racist if they didn't want to handle it, so why not New York? It's all good. Why'd Martha Finney? What? I don't understand. Oh, that's just for us. That's for us plebes. We got to suffer through. Just like lockdowns were good. Lockdowns were good. Except the elites didn't give a fuck. They did what they wanted. And then if they got caught like Gavin Newsom, they're like, oh, my bad for going out to a ridiculous, Michelin star restaurant while you are all locked down and weren't able to see your family. My mistake. All of their shit falls in on itself. All of it. It's all bullshit. Cluster bombs are bad. They're a war crime. Except the cluster bombs we're sending Ukraine are good. And they're to prevent war crimes. Today in the testimony, we need to save democracy by censoring people. We literally had a committee meeting on censorship in which Debbie Wasserman Schultz of the Democrat literally tried to prevent a Democrat candidate for president from speaking. She called for his censorship. While at the same time saying it's absurd that people think we're calling for censorship. That's ridiculous. Which is exactly what they're doing and proving it in real time. They don't give a shit. They're brazen. They don't give a fuck. They say shit to you that's clearly, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to have the small, thank you, Old Gamer Mike. Thank you for the sub. I really appreciate it. You just have to have the smallest bit of rational capability to think. That's all you need. So wait a minute. This deadly virus is coming. Yeah. So you want to lock us down? Yeah. How many lives will that save? All of them. Don't you care about grandma? But wait a minute. You're putting COVID patients in nursing homes with grandma. Yeah. But wait a minute. Why are you preventing young people from going to work because of grandma, but then you're sending COVID patients in with grandma? Well, you don't care about grandma, clearly, Rob. I think this is a bad idea. I don't think that there's proof that this will massively save lives, and I think it's going to harm our economy and harm us in other ways, physically and mentally and socially, and we'll be dealing with these ramifications for years. That's what I think. That's crazy talk. That's bullshit conspiracy stuff, Rob. Then 2 years later, well, we were working with the best available information. No one could have predicted that locking down the economy would hurt the economy. Who could have predicted it? All the economic experts said we had to do it. And look at all the lives it saved. Yeah, really? What lives did it save? Can you show me? Where's the lives it saved? Huh? Oh, you don't have any evidence. You're just making a bullshit claim. Places like Sweden that didn't lock down, they have one of the lowest per capita excess death rates of any fucking country in the world. They didn't lock down. How do you explain that? States like Florida and Georgia that locked down less didn't become insane hellscapes. Their numbers are right around in there with states that locked down way more, like New York. How do you explain that? Yeah, but, actually Biden's doing a good job because when you look at the rate of inflation and the economic progress, we're doing better than countries around the world. Right, because the world economy, because fucking stupid or corrupt governments all around the world decided to lock down. I'm supposed to say that, oh boy, that means that our government gets a pass? What are you talking about? I said lockdowns will crush the economy. They said, nah. Then when lockdowns crush the economy, they go, well, if that's true, why is the rest of the world doing so poorly? Because they locked down too, you dumb shits. You fucking idiots. It was self-evident. How about this one? Here's a lab where the people, Peter Daszak and the people that are getting government funding to give this lab money in Wuhan, has publicly talked in 2017, 2018 about doing gain-of-function testing on bats for coronaviruses. Talked about it. Oh, and now we got a coronavirus that's out of control. And it kind of started up right around that lab. Maybe it came from that lab. I'm not saying it's proof, but maybe it came from a lab. Conspiracy theorists, they shouted. How dare you censor that man? How dare you? Remove his YouTube channel. Shadow ban him. How dare you? That's racist, they said. Excuse me? That's racist against the Chinese. How dare you think that they, in collaboration with the United States government, were working on viruses? How dare you think that? The truth is, the backwards Chinese people were biting the heads off pangolins and bats, and then spread it. That's the non-racist opinion, they said. What? What are you talking about? You saying that basically Chinese people are like barbarians biting the heads off animals without hygiene, that's not racist. But me saying that the U.S. government, in tandem with government agents in China, were weaponizing viruses or working on viruses and it could have escaped from that lab, that's racist. That's their claim. It's fucking laughable. It's so laughable. And yet that was the prevailing argument. You couldn't question it. My YouTube channel has been fucking garbage because I constantly have 2 strikes. Anytime I breathe the fucking word COVID, strike. Anytime I breathe anything about the 2020 election, strike. Meanwhile, lefties can get out and spread any fucking bullshit that they want. Stacey Abrams got cheated. Her election was stolen. The 2016 election was rigged. It's bullshit. We just have to believe it. But trust them on January 6th. Trust them on that shit. That shit's all in the up and up. And trust them on Ukraine. That's all in the up and up. They lied about Iraq happened. They were like, we're not lying. Okay, we lied. Afghanistan, we're not lying. Okay, we lied. COVID, no, it didn't come from a lab. Okay, we lied. Lockdowns, okay, we lied. But now trust them. Now, Russia collusion, okay, we lied. But now they're totally not lying. Now they're totally telling the truth. And we need the government. They were saying at these hearings, I can't remember all the Democrats that were saying, it's amazing. How dare Republicans question the FBI? They need this ability. You go to the New York Times, the dangerous Republicans want to take away the Biden administration's ability to censor disinformation, to control disinformation. This is a threat to democracy. Right, because allowing people to speak is a threat to democracy. Ever read the book 1984? You know what doublespeak is and doublethink? And what people miss in 1984 when they're talking about doublethink and doublespeak is this. It's not saying one thing and believing another. It's saying and believing contradictory opinions simultaneously. And that's what so many of them do. It's not just they're like, I'm saying Like, for example, they'll be like, this Jason Aldean song, that glorifies violence and it's bad and blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, Jay-Z's at the White House. Snoop Dogg. What? Like, gangster rap is a fucking genre. And they're going after Jason Aldean. And they believe it, both things simultaneously in their head. Yeah, that's right, Roland. When they say our democracy, they mean their power. They prefer everything. The Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade was an attack on democracy. You could disagree with the ruling, but clearly it's the opposite of an attack on democracy. Democracy is each person gets a vote. No one votes the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court saying, we're not the ones that decide anymore. We're going to kick it back to the people, to the states. That's more democratic. You might say, I don't like that. Fair enough, we can have that debate. But that wasn't the claim. The claim that was being made was it's anti-democratic, when it's objectively more democratic. All right. I'm going to try some. For those watching on YouTube, I'm going to end my YouTube video here for a minute. Well, not for a minute, for tonight. So you can kick over to my Twitch or my Kick. There's all my platforms. So I'm gonna try something to see if I could end on one show and keep the other going. So thank you to those of you on YouTube. Head over to those channels. I'm gonna try to end this right. I'll be with the rest of you here in a minute.